Chapter 1269. For a moment, Noah and 16 knights could not understand the meaning of the girl's words. After he understood, not to mention 16 knights, the look in Noah's eyes completely changed. From Black Rabbit, Noah did hear about the current situation of No Name. A few years ago, this community was still the largest force in the eastern district of the city. In the game of the Demon King's Gift, not only were all their core companions taken away, even their base was turned into ruins. However, at that time, Noah thought that the so-called ruins referred to the aftermath of the battle between the former members of No Name and the Demon King. Just like the battle between Noah and Doni, it caused a terrifying crater with a diameter of thousands of meters to appear in Italy, causing Italy to pay a shocking loss of more than 15 billion euros. However, if this was the base of No Name, then it was not as simple as the aftermath of the battle. The buildings here did not have any traces of deliberate destruction. The ground did not suffer much damage either. The entire ruins, rather than saying that it was the aftermath of the battle, it was better to say that it was simply abandoned by the erosion of time. However, before it was called No Name, undoubtedly, this community was still a force that spread across several levels, and was the largest force in the entire Eastern District. And the time when that glory finally ended was only 3 years ago. In other words, in just 3 short years, this base became a ruin that was eroded by hundreds of years of time. What is going on? Do you understand what kind of community you have joined? The girl's tone was full of self-mockery. This community that people call No Name has not only lost its flag, name, companions, and all the people, things, and things that can exist in the form of a community. The girl raised her eyes and stared at Noah and 16 knights. Joining this community means that if you want to rebuild it, then you must take back the flag and name from the hands of the Demon King who caused all this. That is a terrifying path of thorns. Even so, do you think it is okay? That was right. After joining No Name, the real problem wasn't that they didn't have a flag, a name, or even an extremely poor situation. Instead, it was that they had to face the Demon King who had once stolen everything from this community. Even the community that was once known as the largest in the entire East District could not match up to the culprit behind the ruins. This was the cruel truth. In this regard, Noah and 16 knights looked at the girl at the same time. The expression in their eyes did not waver at all. Seeing the look in his eyes, the girl understood. The 2 men in front of him had no intention of going back on their words. Why? The girl's tone was more or less a little anxious. Don't you understand how terrifying the Demon King is to be able to cause all this? I understand, of course I understand, 16 knights said arrogantly, as if he was looking down on others. But if that's not the case, then there's nothing about this community that attracts me. This sentence stunned the young girl on the spot. Listen carefully, blonde lowly, 16 knights spread out his hands and smiled from the bottom of his heart. One of my life's creeds is that I must be frank when I'm moved. Frank when I'm moved. The girl looked at 16 knights in a daze. After hesitating for a moment, she asked with uncertainty. You mean to say that the battle with the Demon King will make you feel moved? Isn't that a matter of course? 16 knights sneered. No matter how you look for trouble, or how you look for trouble, in the end, you just have to wave your hand to solve the problem. In order to not kill, you have to deliberately suppress your strength. It's really boring. Creatures like humans, it's because they can't touch the sky that they want to build airplanes. It's because they can't touch the stars that they want to leave the earth and go to the universe, 16 knights said with a carefree laugh that came from the bottom of his heart. Now, there's a Demon King that I may not be able to touch even if I use all my strength. My heart has long been boiling and my head is starting to burn. For the first time in my life, I feel that there's something that I need to pursue and desire. Isn't that enough to move me? The girl was speechless for a moment. Then, she cast her gaze on Noah and said in a deep voice. What about you? Why are you so insistent on joining No Name? For a moment, Noah fell into silence. However, in the next second, Noah said faintly, I want to help them. What? The girl couldn't believe her ears and said in a daze. Help. Help them. That's right. Noah sighed and expressed his thoughts. In words that you can understand, that is, the community that I was in before encountered a situation that was almost no different from this community. Speaking of this, Noah couldn't help but think of the guild that he grew up in. The guild that was called Fairy Tale. Because we encountered a powerful enemy that was almost no different from the Demon King, in order to protect our companions, my guild. In other words, the founder of the community used a powerful force to freeze all of our companions in a world where even time stopped. Noah's voice became faintly discernible. However, in order to release all of our frozen companions, it would take a very long time. During this time, only a few members who weren't very strong were left in the community. Under such circumstances, with their strength, I don't think they could continue to maintain the prosperity of the community, right? Noah said slowly. But, even so, I believe that they will definitely protect our guild, protect our community, protect our common home, and wait for our return. And Black Rabbit is the same. In order to protect this home that could bring her companions back, she fought so hard. With her own strength, she supported the entire community for 3 years. Noah's gaze shot towards the girl like an arrow. So, I can't sit back and do nothing. I want to help this community. If the purpose of this community is to protect the home that could bring back our past companions. Noah said word by word. Then, I will definitely not be stingy in lending my strength. This was the reason why Noah agreed to Black Rabbit's invitation to join her community. Noah believed that his companions in Fairy Tale would definitely be like Black Rabbit, desperately protecting the home that allowed them to return to. Thinking of his companions and Black Rabbit, Noah couldn't sit back and do nothing. Moreover, in Black Rabbit's community, there were all children whose parents had been taken away. These children were similar to the cursed child in Fairy Tale in the world of the Black Bullet. Even if it wasn't as tragic as the fate of the cursed child in Fairy Tale, once they lost the protection of the community, these children would be like them, completely without support. So, this community called No Name touched Noah's heart. The girl named Black Rabbit's determination to protect her companion's home also touched Noah's heart. So, Noah wanted to join No Name. Even if you are the Demon King, so what? If you want to hurt my companions, then show me the determination to fight with your lives on the line. Noah declared loudly. This time, I will definitely protect my companions. The strong determination echoed in the space along with the words, causing 16 Knight's expression to change. The girl was finally speechless. After a long time, the girl laughed bitterly. You are humans with strong hearts, worthy of respect. After saying this, the girl's mature and heavy voice actually had some relief. With your help, this community should be able to have hope again, right? The girl turned around and said softly. I'll leave Black Rabbit and Wren to you. After saying this, the girl flapped the black wings behind her back and flew towards the horizon. This time, neither Noah nor 16 Knights chased after her. Instead, they watched the girl leave until she disappeared from sight. What do you mean? 16 Knights Reversal asked in a bored tone. I thought something interesting would happen, so I chased after her. In the end, she was just here to talk about life. That child seemed to know Black Rabbit, and seemed to have special feelings for this community. Noah frowned. Did she attack Jard's community to save the child in No Name? This was also a puzzle. So, Noah was more or less concerned. That girl, who was she? Chapter 1270. This is, in No Name's base, Juyo Osaka and Hiroi Hiroyuki looked at the barren ruins in front of them and sucked in a breath of cold air. Is this really because of the battle with the Demon King? Kiyoshi's majestic voice was shaken. No matter how you look at it, this is a natural collapse after a long period of time, right? Moreover, there are no signs of life here. Undoubtedly, this is an abandoned human residence. There should be wandering beasts nearby, right? Haruhibu Yaichi was also shocked. What is going on? Looking at Kiyoshi and Haruhibu Yaichi's expressions of disbelief, Kuroto, Ren, and the group of children in the community all had gloomy expressions. This is not something strange. Kuroto said with a complicated expression. To be able to defeat all of our companions who developed the community into the largest power in the East District, Kuroto is not surprised at all. Moreover, the opponent did this on purpose. Ren said in a low voice. To turn this land into what it is now, to show the world his horror, the so-called Demon King is in existence who naturally enjoys this feeling, right? When holding a large-scale game of grace, those who had the ability would basically prepare another game stage, or simply prepare a game disc in another dimension to prevent the powerful forces from causing damage to the box. However, the Demon King was not someone who would be kind enough to protect the territory of the opponent he wanted to play with. After all, the so-called Demon King was in existence who did not care about the wishes of the participants, and used the organizers' authority to force others to participate in their game. They existed to enjoy the horror of others. Kiyoshi and Haruhibu Yaichi seemed to understand this point, and their expressions became complicated. Under the influence of Kiyoshi and Haruhibu Yaichi, the group of no-names' mood became even more gloomy, and a heavy atmosphere filled the surroundings. No. However, this will be a thing of the past very soon. Ren hurriedly comforted. Now, with the participation of Mr. Noah, Mr. 16 Knights, Miss Fei Niao, and Miss Yao, our community will definitely be able to get out of this predicament and develop better. That's right. Black Rabbit's voice also became cheerful, comforting everyone. Wasn't Jared Gasper also easily dealt with by everyone? Hearing this, the expressions of the many children, led by Ren, did become clear. After rescuing the children in No Name, Zhou Fei Niao used her power to manipulate Jard and the members of his community who had done many evil deeds to go to White Yiksha. In order to control the other communities, Jard had kidnapped the children of the other communities and killed them all. This was a very serious crime. If Jard had managed to escape before he was banned, there would be nothing they could do about it. However, under Zhou Fei Niao's control, Jard had no chance of escaping at all. In the end, under the escort of No Name's group, White Yiksha took over and punished him. According to White Yiksha's words, this evil fellow should at least be deprived of his gift and be punished by turning back into an ordinary beast without any rationality. However, after learning that Jard had eaten all the children he killed in order to destroy evidence, White Yiksha angrily took action and personally stripped Jard of his gift. He dismembered Jard, who had turned back into an ordinary beast, and prepared to sell him to a restaurant to become someone's meal. The so-called evil has its retribution. This should be the situation, right? Thinking of this, everyone felt a wave of relief. Black Rabbit is right. Zhou Fei Niao's tone returned to its majestic state, and she smiled slightly. I was already prepared to start anew. If I gave up because of this, wouldn't I have come here for nothing? First, let's start with reviving the community. Hiroi Hiroyuki also nodded and looked around. If these lands can be restored to vitality and used for planting and grazing, then the community's business situation will be much better. In this world, because of the existence of the convenient power of bestowment, the development of technology was not very obvious. Therefore, if they wanted to revive the barren land, they would need a lot of manpower and financial resources. However, once the land could be revived, the community's development would indeed be improved by many levels after planting, grazing, and other operations. As the largest community in the East District in the past, No Name had nothing but a lot of land. We still have very few members now, and most of them are children who don't have high labor power. 16 Nights scratched her head. So, let's not think about this for now. Let's start with the gift game. Black Rabbit, Joyuen Fei Niao, Haruai Hiroyuki, Ren, Lily, and everyone else present all nodded. Looking at his companions, Noah opened his mouth and wanted to say something, but he did not know what to think and changed his mind. Actually, if they wanted to revive the land, Noah had a way. In Noah's treasure vault, there were countless treasures and items related to the god of fertility, the god of harvest, the god of life, and the god of earth that were related to the vitality of the land. Using those treasures and items, if they wanted to revive the land, it would not take much effort. The money needed to buy seedlings and graze livestock, and so on, Noah could also provide an unlimited amount of money. As for labor, even if No Name was lacking, Noah still had a way. Don't forget, in the previous world, Noah obtained a lot of summoning books that could summon monsters. Using those summoning books, Noah could summon a large number of Gorum that would not be tired, did not need to eat, and did not need to rest. In addition, Noah also had items that could increase the harvest of crops and shorten the growth time of crops. In just a month's time, he could increase the productivity of No Name to the same level as before the Demon King's attack. However, for No Name, this was undoubtedly not a good thing. In this community, the only ones who had real combat power were Noah, 16 Nights Reversal, Black Rabbit, Joyuen Fei Niao, and Haruai Hiroyuki. As the leader, although Ren heard that he had the ability to participate in the game of grace, his ability was not high, and he still needed to work on managing the community. This led to No Name needing Black Rabbit's income to support it. In this way, if No Name, in a situation where they lacked combat power, but their business was comparable to before, and obtained a lot of wealth and resources, it would definitely attract many people's greed. If these people were to challenge them in a fair game of grace, and attempt to obtain the wealth and resources they coveted, then it would be fine. The problem was that there was no guarantee that people like Jard would not exist. When the time comes, if the other party found an opportunity to attack No Name's base when Noah and the others were not around, then what should they do? Therefore, before they had enough power to protect everything, rapid development was not a good thing. Of course, Noah could also summon a large number of monsters to protect No Name. However, in that case, No Name would have to rely on Noah alone to deal with it. Noah did not mind. However, the others would definitely have a grudge against him, and might even have a sense of inferiority. He still had to take care of his companions' emotions. In view of this, it was better not to put everything on himself for the time being. However, there were some things that Noah felt that it was better to clarify. At that moment, Noah moved closer to Black Rabbit, lowered his voice, and asked. Today, the person who saved the children and destroyed Jard's community, do you know him? Chapter 1271. When Noah leaned close to Black Rabbit's ear and asked Black Rabbit, the strong breath from the opposite sex made the innocent Black Rabbit's face slightly blush. However, after hearing the content of Noah's words, Black Rabbit's expression froze, and the blush on her face was replaced by gloominess. Because of the kidnapping by Jard's community, the children and No Name were rescued by the girl. Therefore, when Noah and 16 Nights chased after her, Black Rabbit and Ren had already asked the children, represented by Lily, about the appearance of the person who saved them. After that, Black Rabbit and Ren confirmed the full appearance of the girl from Noah and 16 Nights. After confirming, their expressions became somewhat complicated. Coupled with the confrontation with the girl, her words and actions revealed that she had a special relationship with No Name, which made Noah certain that the girl must have some kind of relationship with No Name. Now, Black Rabbit's performance proved that Noah's guess was correct. Under such circumstances, Black Rabbit lowered her head slightly and spoke softly. That lady is called Letitia, a purebred vampire known as the Knights of Box Court. Knights of Box Court. This title was unique to the vampires who lived in the Box Court. The reason was simple. Since ancient times, the vampires' duty was to protect the entire Box Court, and they had put in a lot of effort. It was also mentioned before that in the Box Court, there was a curtain that could cover the entire city. The meaning of the existence of the curtain was to allow races like the vampires who could not be directly exposed to the sun to exist. With the curtain, the vampires could live freely in the Box Court, and even if the sun shone on them, they would not be harmed. It was precisely because of this that the Box Court, with the curtain, was the only city where the vampires could live under the sun. In view of this, since the beginning of the history of the Box Court, the vampires had always been the guardians of the Box Court, protecting the only city where they could live under the sun. Therefore, the vampires were known as the Knights of Box Court. This was because when they entered the Box Court, Black Rabbit had already mentioned it in the introduction of the curtain above the city. Therefore, Noah was not surprised. What really surprised Noah was the other term that Black Rabbit mentioned. Pure breed. That child is a purebred vampire. Black Rabbit had also mentioned this aspect of knowledge. The so-called purebred referred to the gift at the beginning of the tree of life. There was a law to the evolution of all living things. As for the system tree, it was used to represent the evolutionary relationships between species. From aquatic to terrestrial. From low to high. From simple to complex. The evolution of life was thus linked together in the form of a tree, forming an entire history of life evolution. Purebred meant that they were at the beginning of this evolutionary history. It was almost no different from terms such as, without impurities, pure and unsullied, and the most orthodox. It was a special existence that could be called separately even within the same species. Of course, this was not the most important thing. Most importantly, almost all of the species that could be described as pure breeds had godheads. If one were to say that spirituality was the ranking of life forms, then divinity was the highest ranking of life forms. It did not refer to those natural gods themselves, but to the gift that could transform an individual into the highest level of a species. For example, if a snake was given divinity, the snake would transform into a snake god. For example, if a person was given divinity, the person would transform into an immortal or a child prodigy. For example, if a ghost was given divinity, the ghost would transform into a ghost god that could shake heaven and earth. With divinity, not only could one evolve to the highest level of a species, but even all of one's other gifts could be strengthened, producing an explosive qualitative improvement. Therefore, in the Box Court, many communities would first set obtaining divinity as an important goal in order to achieve their own goals. Even ordinary wild beasts would transform into beast gods after obtaining divinity. One could imagine how terrifying the advantages of possessing divinity were. And almost all of the existences that could be called pure breeds had divinity. That was what Noah was surprised by. In this regard, Black Rabbit revealed a somewhat proud smile. That's right, Letitia Sama was such a pure ghost with divinity. In the distant past, she was also one of the demon kings that wreaked havoc in the Box Court. Later on, she joined Black Rabbit's community and became Black Rabbit Sr. This time, Noah was even more surprised. You're saying that the child called Letitia was not only a demon king, but also a member of this community. Noah was not the only one who was surprised. Everyone else was surprised as well. I see, the original Demon King. 16 Nights Reversal said this with excitement and annoyance. Damn, if I knew earlier, I wouldn't have let her escape so easily. The one who saved those children was actually such an amazing existence? Jiu Fei now exclaimed. No wonder she could destroy a community that was second to none here. If she was a demon king, then it wouldn't be strange. So, there was a demon king member in this community in the past. Haruhito Hikari raised the three-furred cat in his arms. That's amazing. Yes, Letitia-sama is the best. Black Rabbit nodded, then was shocked and shouted at 16 Nights Reversal, Jiu Fei Niao, and Haruhito Hikari who appeared around him without him knowing. You mean, when did everyone get here? Unfortunately, no one paid attention to Black Rabbit's ridicule and fell into deep thought. I've been wondering why Letitia would save the children here. Jiu Fei Niao suddenly said. Now, the reason is clear. Since she was a former companion, then it's not strange. Haruhito Hikari nodded. She appeared at the right time. But, why would the blonde loli appear here? 16 Nights Reversal asked curiously. Since she's a member of this community, then it means that she was a companion taken away by the Demon King 3 years ago. I'm more concerned about why the girl called Letitia didn't come back. Noah shook his head. Since she's a companion of this community and saved the children, why did she leave without permission and have no intention of coming back? Actually, I've been looking for an opportunity to tell everyone recently. Black Rabbit was silent for a while and immediately gathered his courage. After being taken away by the Demon King, Letitia-sama seemed to have been traded as an item many times and fell into the hands of Thousand Eyes. Thousand Eyes. Noah was slightly taken aback. Isn't that the community where Byakuya is? Yes. Black Rabbit nodded heavily. Then, recently, Thousand Eyes seems to be holding a gift game, and the prize of that gift game is Letitia-sama. Hearing this, everyone more or less understood. In other words, the reason the vampire named Letitia is here is because she is the prize of Thousand Eyes. Noah frowned, and there was a hint of disgust in his expression. Using people as prizes. Isn't it good? 16 Nights Reversal grinned and said to Black Rabbit. You want us to participate in the gift game and take back the blonde loli called Letitia? Yes. Black Rabbit quickly nodded. Letitia-sama is a very important companion of ours, and she's a purebred demon, and even a demon king. If such Letitia-sama can return to the community, then our community's strength can rise to another level, right? Joyuen Osaka continued Black Rabbit's words. This is indeed a good opportunity. Then, Haruhi Hiroyuki raised his hand. Who's going to participate? The scene suddenly became cold. Ah. Black Rabbit trembled as he spoke. Isn't everyone participating together? Suddenly, except for Noah, the other 3 people all refuted. Why? That's not interesting at all, right? Same. Black Rabbit was dumbfounded. This group of problematic children. Chapter 1272. Nate slowly descended. In No Name's base of operations, it was a barren wasteland. The dry wind blew like a desert, sweeping up some sand and dust, spreading along with the night. The surroundings were gradually covered by darkness. Buildings that seemed to have gone through a long period of time seemed to have returned to their original world. Combined with the appearance, it gave off a somewhat gloomy feeling, making people wonder if this was a haunted house. However, if one walked along the stone path in the ruins for a while, then, one would gradually come to a place where empty houses with relatively intact appearances stood side by side. This was the residential area of the members of No Name. Taking a closer look, not far from the residential area, there was a clear flowing waterway that looked like a river. Around the waterway, the children belonging to No Name were laughing and laughing, while using small wooden buckets to collect water from the waterway, and transported it into the other building in a good mood. In today's No Name, compared to the past, the number of buildings that were still in use was pitifully small. However, as the largest power in the East District in the past, the buildings in this community were still quite grand. Not to mention the others, there were currently 2 buildings with lights shining out from the windows. One was a building that was the size of a hotel. That was the headquarters of No Name. According to the tradition of this community, those who were able to participate in the bestowment game would obtain a rank, starting from the lowest rank, and the higher the rank, the higher the floor they would live in. However, now, because of the lack of manpower and the inconvenience of moving around, no matter if it was Black Rabbit or Wren, they didn't want to insist on this tradition, so they let everyone choose freely. In addition, there was another building that was the other building. The other building was where more than 100 children of no name lived. Originally, the other building had other uses, but now, because of Wei An's problem, the children of the community all lived there. Because the community needed to rely on those who were able to participate in the bestowment game, no matter which community it was, there seemed to be a rule that required those who were unable to participate in the bestowment game to support the private lives of the participants, even to the extent of sacrificing themselves for them. That was why the children in no name came to the waterway to draw water for their meals, washing up, cleaning, and so on. After coming out of the gymnasium, Noah first glanced at those children who were laughing and chatting happily. Then, he came to the side of the waterway, squatted down, and put his hand into the cold water. I didn't expect that even water is a very precious resource in Box Court. To be more precise, it should be said that the Eastern District was originally an area that was not very rich in water resources. In the north, south, east, west, and north of Hakata, each area had its own unique characteristics. There was an abundance of snow in the northern district. There was a large river that flowed through the city in the southern district. Therefore, the southern and northern districts were regions with relatively abundant water resources. On the other hand, there wasn't much precipitation in the Eastern District. There were very few communities that could store enough water. They could only set up waterways in the city and bring in water from the rivers outside. However, only a community with some influence who could afford to use it could use it. In the Eastern District, in the 7 digits of the outer gate, many communities could only go outside the city to draw water. Water resources were considered quite precious. Before Noah and the others came, the children in no name also needed to go outside the city to draw water. But now, with Noah here, why would they need to worry about water? Therefore, Noah took out a water droplet that could produce unlimited water from his treasury and let Black Rabbit put it in the reservoir. It was said that in the past, the reservoir also had the gift of producing unlimited water, but that was no longer there. Therefore, Black Rabbit, who obtained the water droplet, had a face full of excitement. He hurriedly brought the water droplet to the reservoir and opened the water door of the reservoir, allowing the water to flow through the waterway that led to the gymnasium for the people in no name to use. Just like this, step by step, little by little, I'll contribute to the community. Noah muttered to himself. If I take on all the problems and work in one go, even if the others don't say it verbally, they will definitely hold grudges against me for being unable to do anything. Saying this, Noah raised his head again and looked at the children who were laughing and playing while drawing water. He couldn't help but smile. It was also at this time that a voice sounded from behind Noah. Mr. Noah's mood seems to be very good. Hearing this voice, Noah was startled at first, but he didn't turn his head around and directly spoke. Black Rabbit. Yes. Black Rabbit responded energetically and came to Noah's side. He also squatted down and put one of his hands into the water, revealing a comfortable expression. This water is really comfortable. It's cool and clean. If I sell it outside, I might be able to earn quite a bit. Up to you, Noah responded casually. Compared to this water, I want to restore the fields here. It's really a waste to leave such a large piece of land unutilized. Ha! Black Rabbit's long ears perked up and looked at Noah with a bright expression. Mr. Noah, do you have a way to restore the land here? Well, sort of, Noah said perfunctorily. However, there are still some problems that need to be solved first. Let me think about it before implementing it. Understood. Black Rabbit wasn't disappointed. Instead, his pretty face was filled with hope. It's really great to be able to meet Mr. Noah. Not only are you strong, but you can also make Lord White Yiksha want to rope you in. You also helped us solve the problem of water and land. Black Rabbit really doesn't know how to thank Mr. Noah. As for me, I'm just doing something that's similar to self-satisfaction. I don't deserve your thanks. Noah shook his head. Moreover, 16th Knight's strength isn't weaker than my current strength. Fei Niao and Yao's gifts also have considerable potential. If you want to thank, you should thank them together, right? Yes, Miss Fei Niao and Miss Yao. When we go to the bathhouse to take a bath later, Black Rabbit will thank them properly. Black Rabbit clenched his fist tightly with an inspirational look. Mr. 16th Knight seems to have something to discuss with young Master Ren. Therefore, Black Rabbit will also thank him afterward. 16th Knight. Noah narrowed his eyes slightly and suddenly smiled. It seems that Guy also has his own ideas about how this community should develop next. Ha! Black Rabbit was stunned and asked in confusion. What does that mean? It means literally. Noah laughed. Since that guy will go to the leader of the community to discuss something, then he should have some ideas. That's what I think. Is that so? Black Rabbit tilted his head. Black Rabbit feels that Mr. 16th Knight doesn't seem to be thinking about anything. That's because you haven't seen through his sloppy appearance. Noah curled his lips. Although it's just my intuition, I feel that Guy doesn't only know how to wave his fists. His brain shouldn't be bad either. Is that so? Black Rabbit looked even more confused. Why would Mr. Noah have such an intuition? Who knows? Noah lowered his head and looked at the clear water reflecting the moonlight in the waterway and said, perhaps, people who have fought each other with their fists would have such an intuition. At least, Noah didn't think that 16th Knight, the arrogant guy who did things his own way, would talk to Ren for no reason. Just like how Noah had ideas about the land and water in No Name, 16th Knight must have some ideas about the future development of this community. No matter what, Noah was still looking forward to the plan that 16th Knight would come up with to develop the community. However, unlike me, who struggled in all kinds of deceitful regimes and filthy societies, that guy shouldn't have relied on his knowledge and talent instead of experience, right? Chapter 1273. Just like that, the first night in the courtyard passed by very slowly. In one of the rooms in No Name, Noah woke up due to the warm morning sunlight shining into the room through the window. When he came to the courtyard where gods and Buddhas walked everywhere and divine beasts were as numerous as dogs, Noah did not suffer any difficulties that were worth tiring him out on the bed and sleeping so hard that he could not wake up. After all, even if there were so many bug-level existences in the courtyard, in the lowest 7-digit level, it was impossible to encounter them all the time. To be able to meet a white yiksha on the first day was already something to be surprised about. As for Jard and the others, they were not even considered troublesome and could only be considered as a pastime. Therefore, after Noah woke up, he only stretched and did not have any intention of continuing to sleep. However, when Noah stretched his body, he immediately felt that something was wrong. The sudden sense of dissonance caused Noah to stop stretching. He tilted his head and after a moment of confusion, he finally understood where the dissonance came from. At that moment, Noah lifted the blanket, but he didn't see the familiar scene that he had imagined. What's going on? Noah frowned slightly and looked around. Where's Aster? In the past, in the morning, Aster would usually transform into his human form and crawl into Noah's bed. However, today, not only did Aster not crawl into Noah's bed, he also disappeared without a trace. After searching the entire bed but not finding Aster, Noah's frown deepened. Why isn't he here? Noah clearly remembered that before going to bed, he had indeed placed Aster, who had transformed into a small sword, on the bed. Now, since the small silver sword had disappeared, it proved that Aster should have transformed into his human form. However, after transforming into his human form, Aster did not crawl into Noah's bed and even disappeared without a trace. This was something that had never happened before. Knock knock knock. Just as Noah wanted to use the spirit contract between him and Aster to find out where Aster was, there was a knock on the door. Noah came back to his senses and looked at the door. "Please come in." As soon as Noah finished speaking, a somewhat nervous voice sounded. "Call. Sorry for disturbing you." As he said this, Noah's door was opened. The next moment, a young girl with fox ears and a fox tail wearing a Japanese-style apron that matched her short height entered Noah's eyes. "You are." Noah had an impression of this fox-eared girl. "I remember that your name is Lily, right?" "Yes. Yes, Lord Noah." Lily revealed a nervous expression and bowed to Noah in fear and trepidation. My name is Lily, and I'm part of the senior group in this community. I'm in charge of the daily lives of the participants." "Is that so?" Noah scratched his cheek. "Although I'm very grateful to you, you don't have to be nervous. I won't make things difficult for you." "Yes. Yes, I understand." Although Lily said so, there was still a slight nervousness in her expression. It wasn't that Noah looked scary, but this child was obviously not good at dealing with strangers. After all, Noah joined No Name only yesterday. Understanding this, Noah could only touch his nose and change the topic. "What? Do you need something from me?" "No. That." Lily pushed a cart in from the side. I'm here to deliver breakfast to Lord Noah." Taking a closer look, there was indeed some breakfast on the cart. And it was quite rich. This made Noah a little surprised. "Hey, Lily, why is the breakfast so rich?" Noah asked in confusion. "I remember that this community shouldn't be very rich, right?" Not only was it not very rich. The community of No Name had lost its name, lost its flag, and even lost its core members. All that was left was a group of children who didn't have the ability to participate in the bestowment game. They had already reached the point of destitution. Although they barely survived by relying on Black Rabbit's refereeing, there were more than 100 mouths to feed. Even if they were children who didn't have a big appetite, everyone had to live a life of intermittent meals. It was because he understood this situation that Noah was surprised. In response, Lily smiled shyly and said, "It's not that big of a deal. These breakfasts are all made from the plants that can be harvested from the vegetable garden, so there's no problem." Vegetable garden. Noah was stunned. "But the land here hasn't recovered yet, right?" "Yes, but we have reclaimed a small piece of land behind the main hall for everyone to cultivate together." Lily's tone started to become slightly more fluent, but her expression was a little downcast. "If the other land hasn't lost its vitality, then it can be used to raise livestock, and it can also be used to open up a very vast farmland like before." Although No Name had been destroyed by the Demon King, the territory was still preserved. Noah heard that in the past, the number of residents living here was enough to rival a city. From this, one could imagine how vast the territory was to allow a community of that scale to maintain their livelihood. It was because of this that it was very difficult to revive such a large piece of land. And for Noah, reviving the land was secondary. The most important thing was to take care of the emotions of his companions. However, Lily's words made Noah more or less understand. "I see, there's no need to restore all of it at once. Can't we restore a part of it first?" Even Lily and the others had reclaimed a small vegetable garden behind the main hole. Then, Noah only needed to restore a small part of the land first, so that his companions in the community had the ability to take care of and protect it. It didn't need to be done by Noah alone. Wouldn't that be enough? He didn't even think of such a simple logic. Noah was really too smart for his own good. Thank you, Lily. Noah couldn't help but pat Lily's head. You've really helped a lot. Lily was startled at first, but when she reacted, her face turned red. Although I don't know what's going on, it's good to be able to help. Saying so, Lily was embarrassed by Noah's pat on the head, but at the same time, her pair of foxtails kept swinging. She seemed to be in a very good mood. This child is quite cute. Noah, who felt that something dangerous was about to sprout in his heart, smiled embarrassedly. Then, he remembered Aster's matter and quickly asked Lily. Oh right, Lily, did you see a girl with very beautiful silver hair, about the same age as you? Silver hair. Lily blinked, and then she remembered something. I think I did see her. Is that so? Noah took a deep breath and asked. Then where is she? Oh. Lily made a gesture of recalling. I remember that she seemed to have gone in the direction of the bathhouse. Really? Noah nodded. Then I'll go look for her first. Lily, please push the breakfast to the discussion room. I'll go eat later. After saying that, Noah directly left the room and walked in the direction of the bathhouse. At this time, Lily finally reacted and panicked. Oh. Oh no, Sir Noah can't go now. However, when Lily was panicking, Noah had already disappeared at the end of the corridor, leaving Lily standing there in a daze. Originally, in No Name, where even getting water was a difficult task, the existence of the bathhouse was equivalent to a dispensable place. Whether it was Black Rabbit or Wren, there was no way for them to extravagantly use the water that they painstakingly obtained from outside the city to take a bath in the bathhouse. However, after Noah guaranteed the water source, the bathhouse was opened yesterday. Noah also enjoyed himself in the bathhouse yesterday. Based on yesterday's memory, Noah arrived at the entrance of the bathhouse. After arriving here, Noah could faintly feel the connection between him and Aster. Noah finally let out a sigh of relief and directly opened the door of the bathhouse. Aster, where did you run to? Before he could finish his sentence, Noah's breath caught in his throat, and he was stunned. Chapter 1274. History is always surprisingly similar. When Noah opened the door of the bathhouse and saw the situation inside, this was the first thought that flashed through his mind. Because, undoubtedly, it was not the first time he had encountered such a thing, Noah still encountered a surprisingly similar plot. In the bathhouse, everyone who suddenly heard the sound of the door being opened made such a puzzled sound. Then, they all turned their heads and looked at the door. As a result, Noah and the three girls in the room looked at each other. At this moment, Noah's breathing stopped. At this moment, the breathing of the three girls also stopped. The four of them stared at each other in a daze, causing a strange silence to pervade the surroundings. Of course, if it was just a meeting, then, it would definitely not make both sides react like this. The problem was, this was a bathhouse. Then, what the people who came here usually did, the answer was obvious. Noah almost couldn't help but cast his gaze on the three girls in the bathhouse. The first thing that was imprinted in Noah's eyes was the skin that was so white that it made people feel dazzled. That was the skin of the three girls, Black Rabbit, Jiu Yuanfei, and Haruai Buyao, who were completely naked. Then, Noah took in all three of the delicate bodies. Among the three girls, Black Rabbit's figure was undoubtedly the best. Undoubtedly, at first glance, she was only about 16 or 17 years old, but the fullness and well-developed legs in front of her formed an ideal figure that had not collapsed at all. It was definitely not an exaggeration to say that it was protruding forward and backward. Jiu Yuanfei's figure was not as bewitching as Black Rabbit's, but it could definitely attract the attention of any healthy man. Although Jiu Yuanfei had the temperament of a young lady, In fact, in terms of age, this girl was only 15 years old. For a 15-year-old girl, her well-developed figure was fully displayed in front of Noah, and it also made people feel suffocated. As for Hiroi Biao, compared to the previous two, he lacked the ups and downs that matched his age. However, Haruhi Masaaki's figure was slender and balanced. His posture was also very graceful. Even if he looked a little immature, his collarbone and lines were quite attractive. Who could say that such a gentle and quiet girl didn't have any charm? Even if it was Noah, he would not be able to go against his conscience and say that he would not have any evil thoughts after seeing such a delicate body. In such a situation, three perfect, beautiful, and gentle bodies were completely displayed in front of Noah, making Noah stunned. And when the person who saw it reacted in such a manner, the person who saw it naturally fell into a state of complete paralysis and couldn't react in time. A strange silence still pervaded the entire place. As a result, no matter if it was Noah, Black Rabbit, Judo Asuka, or Haruhito Masaaki, none of them paid any attention to the fifth person present. That was until the fifth one spoke. In the corner, the sword spirit girl, who was also in a state of nakedness, but wearing a pair of black knee socks, spoke with an expressionless face. I am quite unhappy with your sudden behavior of ignoring me. This sentence completely broke the silence of the scene. Black Rabbit and Judo Asuka's pretty face instantly turned red. Although Haruhito Masaaki's face was not as exaggerated as Black Rabbit and Judo Asuka's, but his pretty face was also stained with a blush. The three girls almost subconsciously raised their hands and blocked in front of their bodies, covering the important parts of their bodies. Yeah. Black Rabbit hugged his chest and screamed with a red face. You are still looking. Judo Asuka also hugged her chest and shouted in embarrassment. Get out. At this moment, following Judo Asuka's words, an invisible force like a viscous liquid instantly covered Noah's entire body. It was Judo Asuka's gift, Aura of Might. The power to control others, along with the words, was used on Noah's body. Unfortunately, for Noah, who had a curse resistance and a physique that was immune to all negative powers, it only made his body stiffen for a moment, and the invisible force on his body was all shaken off. Judo Asuka's face suddenly turned red as she froze on the spot. Obviously, this was the first time that Judo Asuka's gift was ineffective. In this situation, Noah also reacted, and couldn't help but take a step back, and smiled embarrassedly. Sorry, I went to the wrong place. After saying this, Noah fiercely closed the door. Bang! The loud sound of the door closing resounded throughout the entire bathhouse. Black Rabbit, Judo Asuka, and Haruhito Masaaki looked at each other, and their pretty faces were incomparably red, and no one said a word. In the end, it was Haruhito Masaaki who used his usual quiet voice to say this sentence. It seems like we have been seen naked. Touching the pot that didn't boil. Black Rabbit and Judo Asuka's pretty face turned red. Black Rabbit. Judo Asuka's face turned red as she angrily glared at Black Rabbit. I remember that you were the last one to come in, right? Why didn't you lock the door? Ugh. Black Rabbit's expression was as if he was about to cry, and spoke with fear and trepidation. I forgot. In other words, it's all your fault that we have been seen naked, right? Judo Asuka was so angry that her whole body was trembling, and fiercely reached out her hand, and grabbed Black Rabbit's long ear, and pulled it hard. You stupid rabbit. Yua. Black Rabbit frantically cried out. Yao. Yao-san. Quickly help me. However, Haruhito Masaaki half squinted his eyes, and also reached out a hand, and grabbed Black Rabbit's other long ear, and pulled it hard. You stupid rabbit. Yua. Yua. Black Rabbit could only struggle as he cried out loudly. I'm in the wrong. Watching Black Rabbit being ravaged by Judo Osaka and Haruhito Masaaki, Aster only quietly watched from the side. A pair of mysterious eyes appeared as beautiful as gemstones in the foggy bathroom. About half an hour later, in the main hall's meeting room, a group of no-name main members had all arrived at the scene. However, Judo Osaka's face was red, and she had a look of deep hatred. She stared at Noah, who was sitting opposite her, as if she couldn't wait to swallow Noah whole. Haruhito Masaaki was hugging Sanmao, and was as quiet as usual, but he also half squinted his eyes and looked in Noah's direction. Black Rabbit touched her pair of long rabbit ears, and stared at Noah with tears in her eyes. Her pitiful expression made people want to bully her. Sitting opposite Black Rabbit, Judo Osaka, and Haruhito Masaaki, Noah endured the 3 different gazes, and felt as if he was sitting on pins and needles. However, when he thought of the beautiful scene in the bathhouse, even Noah couldn't help but feel a ripple in his heart. Hey, I say, you guys didn't do anything interesting behind my back, right? 16 Nights crossed her arms, frowned, and cast her gaze to Noah's side. Also, who is that silver-haired loli over there? Everyone's gaze suddenly converged on the seat beside Noah. There, Aster was holding a piece of bread, biting it expressionlessly, and puffing his cheeks back and forth like a squirrel, looking extremely cute. Noah then remembered Aster's matter, and with the intention of changing the topic, he hurriedly asked Black Rabbit, Judo Osaka, and Haruhito Masaaki. Right. That's right, how did you guys end up with Aster? When they were in the bathhouse, Black Rabbit, Judo Osaka, and Haruhito Masaaki obviously planned to take a bath together with Aster. Undoubtedly, Noah didn't introduce Aster to everyone, so Black Rabbit and the others shouldn't know who Aster was. Black Rabbit was still rubbing her rabbit ears that were hurt by Judo Osaka and Haruhito Masaaki, and said with tears in her eyes. Could it be that Miss Aster isn't under Noah-san's favor? Noah paused, then nodded. That's possible, but how did you guys know? Judo Osaka snorted. Didn't this child call you master? Chapter 1275. As mentioned earlier, as long as it was a mysterious power that ordinary humans couldn't possess, it could be called a gift. From this point of view, the power that Noah possessed was also called a gift in this world. Therefore, Noah had never denied that the power he possessed was a gift. Because, from the worldview of this world, Noah's power was considered a gift. However, Noah's power wasn't obtained from this world, but from other worlds. In view of this, the so-called omniscient Laplace paper couldn't identify the power that Noah had obtained from other worlds, leading White Yiksha to conclude that there was no gift. After all, the so-called omniscience was only limited to this world. Even if it was called omniscient, it was impossible for Laplace to possess the knowledge of the other feather worlds in the world between worlds. In this world, there were also many kinds of gifts. The gift that an individual possessed was a type of ability that was directly linked to one's soul. In other words, this type of gift was a part of one's soul. It couldn't be forcibly taken away without the consent of the owner of the gift. In addition, there were also gifts that could be bestowed on weapons, allowing the weapons to possess power and be used by the wielder. It was a materialized type of gift that could be used. This type of gift could be directly taken away by force. However, it was also because of this that some of the materialization-type blessings were extremely powerful and had very strict requirements for the user. If the requirements couldn't be met, then even if the gift was forcibly taken away, it couldn't be used. In addition, an individual with life could also become a gift. That was a situation that would only occur when the gift belonged to a certain person. For example, when some people used their own abilities to create living puppets, spirits, ghosts, and the like, these created individuals were naturally a gift from the Creator. For example, some spirits, ghosts, and even gods signed a subordinate contract with a certain person and became that person's power. That was also a gift that belonged to the owner. In such a situation, even if the target was an individual with life, the gift card could be used to accept it. It was enough to prove the fact that they belonged to a certain person. Black Rabbit even said that in the box court, if someone defeated the Demon King in the gift game with the authority of the organizer, then the Demon King could also become a gift that belonged to him and the community. Therefore, when Aster called Noah his master, Black Rabbit naturally regarded Aster as a gift from Noah. As a matter of fact, in this world, Aster, who had signed a contract with Noah, was considered a gift from Noah. Noah didn't question this. What Noah was really puzzled about was why Aster was with Black Rabbit, Kudo Osaka, and Haruhide Masaaki. The one who answered Noah's question was not Black Rabbit, nor was it Kyuyuki or Kasuge Hiroyuki. Aster, who was chewing on a piece of bread, suddenly raised his head and said, "Because in the morning, Master sprayed something on me, so I wanted to find water to wash it off. Coincidentally, I met these people and went to the bathing area together." As soon as he said this, the entire place fell into a deathly silence. Noah's mouth was agape. He looked at Aster with a marvelous expression. Black Rabbit, Judo Osaka, and Haruhito Masaaki were silent for a while. Then, they looked at Noah with disdain and contempt. It was as if he was looking at the king of ghosts and beasts. In the morning. Sprayed something. Still need to wash it off. 16 Knights looked at Noah in astonishment. Hey, little bro, don't tell me you took something white." Before 16 Knights could finish his sentence, a fist suddenly whistled through the air and heavily smashed into his face. Bang! A hand suddenly caught the fist that was smashing towards him, causing a muffled sound to ring out. "I say, little bro," 16 Knights looked at Noah with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "You didn't seem to have any intention of holding back with that punch, right? Is that so?" Noah's eyes twitched as he retracted his fist. "Anyway, student 16 Knight's skin is thick. You didn't die even after hundreds of punches, let alone one punch this time. A sandbag can also take hits, but I'm not a sandbag. Compared to getting hit, I prefer to hit people." 16 Knights spread his hands and revealed an evil smile. "Or do you really have a guilty conscience, little brother?" The corner of Noah's mouth twitched. He resisted the urge to punch 16 Knights in the face again. He took a deep breath and looked at Aster with a fake smile on his face. "Aster, can I trouble you to explain clearly what I sprayed on your body?" "Yes, master." Aster's face was still expressionless. "Master sprayed something sticky on my body." Black Rabbit, Jiu Yuanfei, and Haruhi Hikari's eyes became dangerous. Noah finally couldn't stay calm. "Aster." Noah almost covered his face. "Do you know that if you continue to use such misleading words, I won't be able to continue staying here?" "Why?" Aster tilted his head and asked in confusion. "What I said is the truth." "Then please explain clearly." Noah couldn't help but raise his voice. "What did I spray on you?" Aster blinked his eyes that were filled with mystery. After a while, he finally spat out 2 words. "Saliva." Including Noah, Black Rabbit, Jiu Yuanfei, and Haruhi Hikari almost fell down. "You sprayed saliva on the loli." 16 Knights laughed out loud. "Isn't this not bad? Little bro. How long did you lick this silver-haired loli's body?" "Lick?" Black Rabbit, Judo Osaka, and Haruhi Hikari opened their eyes wide and glared at Noah angrily. I didn't expect Mr. Noah to be such a person. I thought you were a gentleman. I was wrong about you. I don't want to be friends with such a pervert." Wait. Don't be led by the nose by this guy." Noah couldn't help but yell out. This guy only said that because he thought it was fun. Don't you see him clearly? In fact, this is indeed very fun, 16 Nights Reversal said openly without any remorse. To be able to monopolize such a delicious loli, you must have a lot of fun, right? Noah turned his gaze to 16 Nights, and a dangerous glint flashed in his dark eyes. Okay, I won't say any more. 16 Nights raised his hand and made a gesture of surrender. I still have something important to do today, so let's leave this for another time. Coincidentally, the door to the meeting room opened at this time. As the leader of the community, Ren walked in from outside and immediately sensed the strange atmosphere at the scene. He asked in confusion. What's wrong? What happened? Nothing, young Master Xiao Budian, you came at the right time. 16 Nights said as if nothing had happened. Now, the main members of the community are all here. How should this community develop? Young Master Xiao Budian, tell us your plan. Hearing this, Black Rabbit, Jiu Yuanfei, and Haruai Hikari became serious. They glanced at Noah and sat down angrily. Obviously, these three girls still hadn't gotten over the fact that Noah had barged into the bathhouse and seen all of them naked. Noah could only sigh about how difficult his future would be. He sat down and said weakly. Alright, Ren, tell us about the long talk you had with 16 Nights last night. What was the result? I understand. Ren was a little nervous, but he nodded with a sense of realization. He came to the seat of honor and sat down. The entire meeting room was suddenly shrouded in silence. Only the sound of Aster eating bread could be heard. Ren Huan glanced at the crowd and said, I have decided that from today onwards, we will use Defeat the Demon King as the mission of the community. Chapter 1276. Defeat the Demon King. Ren's words confused everyone present except 16 Nights. I'm sorry, Ren Kuan, I don't really understand what you mean. Jiu Yuao pointed out. Our community's flag, name, and companions were all taken away by the Demon King. Then, defeating him as our mission, that seems to be natural, right? If that's the case, why ask something that is natural as a mission when you already know the answer? Jiu Yuao looked at Ren with such a meaning in her eyes. Not only Jiu Yuao, even Black Rabbit and Haruai Toshi expressed their doubts. Only Noah frowned slightly as he spoke in an uncertain tone. Ren, the Demon King you speak of, shouldn't be referring to the Demon King who took away our community's flag, name, and companions? Yes. Ren nodded his head heavily. The Defeat the Demon King that I'm referring to is not only the Demon King who took away our community's flag, name, and companions, but all the Demon Kings in this box. All the Demon Kings. Black Rabbit, Jiu Yuao, and Haruai Toshi were all shocked. Not to mention the others, even Noah was shocked. Defeat all the Demon Kings as a mission. What kind of joke is this? Ren. Young Master Ren. Black Rabbit said in a panic. Are you serious? Black Rabbit couldn't be blamed for losing her composure. One must know that although the number of Demon Kings that wreaked havoc in the box was not in the thousands, but there were definitely hundreds and thousands. Among these Demon Kings, although some were weaker and some were stronger, just one Demon King was enough to beat the predecessor of No Name, to the point where he was unable to recover from the setback. Defeat all the Demon Kings as a mission. Then you don't even know how to write the word death, right? However, as the leader, Ren spoke rather calmly. I'm sorry, Black Rabbit, I'm serious, because doing this will give our community a chance to develop and thrive. A chance to develop and thrive. Haruai Toshi tilted her head and asked in confusion. What do you mean? If a community wants to develop, it is absolutely necessary to participate in the game of blessings. In other words, it requires powerful blessings and powerful blessings bearers, in other words, talents, Ren explained. If our community wants to take back our flag and name, we need powerful participants to join us. For this reason, we must let people with strength join our community. Everyone nodded in agreement. It was because of this that Black Rabbit summoned 16 knights, Joyuasuka, and Hiroi Buyao into the box. However, it is undeniable that our community has neither a name nor a flag. Ren shook his head. Since there is nothing that can symbolize the community, even if we want to publicize the existence of the community and attract talents to join, it is impossible to do so. Moreover, as a nameless community, our community cannot have any factor that can attract outstanding talents to join. It had to be said that this was a cruel fact. The community that people called No Name had no famous members or rich resources. It only had a piece of land that had fallen into ruins and some children that needed to be protected. The only thing that could attract people's attention was probably Black Rabbit, who was known as the box aristocrat. So, I have discussed with Mr. 16 Knights. We think that we must highlight the uniqueness of this community and create opportunities and topics that can promote the name, so that we can attract talents, Ren said solemnly. As long as the slogan, "Defeat the Demon King," is raised, then, no matter what, this topic will spread in the box. Along with it, our community will also have the opportunity to promote and develop. That is to say. Black Rabbit said with some uncertainty. Young Master Ren, do you plan to promote the community in the form of rumors? Of course, it can't be just a rumor. Otherwise, not only will this community become a laughingstock, the rumors will also disappear with the passage of time. We have to create a community that can truly make people believe that our purpose is to defeat the Demon King. Ren Huan looked at everyone present. That is to say, we must really defeat the Demon King and make this purpose a reality. Black Rabbit, Joyuasuka, and Hiroi Buyao suddenly held their breaths. But, isn't this purpose too dangerous? Noah put forward his own opinion. At that time, to this arrogant community with the purpose of defeat the Demon King, those Demon Kings who think that they are extraordinary will definitely have a reaction. If the Demon King is attracted, then what should we do? It doesn't matter. Our plan is to defeat the Demon King. It would be better if the other party comes to us himself, Ren said immediately. Moreover, the people who will be attracted will not only be the Demon King, but also those who have been persecuted by the Demon King. Like us, there must be many people who have fallen into such a miserable state because of the Demon King. Among them, there must be some who hate the Demon King and want to defeat the Demon King as their goal. This way, they may join our community. Not to mention, as long as we can defeat the Demon King, then according to the rules of the box, we can make the Demon King one of our own people, right? 16 Knights said slowly. Since it is a guy who can be called the Demon King, his ability must be extraordinary. Defeat them one by one and then pull them into our community. In that case, the development of the community is simply unimaginable, isn't it? Everyone suddenly looked at each other. Indeed, this was a good method. However, there were too many uncertainties in it. If we act according to this policy, in the end, it can indeed allow the community to achieve unimaginable development. Noah suddenly said. However, this is under the condition that the implementation of this policy is successful and smooth. Right now, only me, 16 Knights, Flying Bird, and Radiance are free to participate in the game of blessings. With the strength of the four of us, if we are defeated by the so-called Demon King, we will be doomed eternally, right? Oh. 16 Knights raised his eyebrows and showed a provocative smile to Noah. What's wrong? Brother. Don't you have the confidence to defeat the Demon King? Whether I have confidence or not is one thing, whether there is risk or not is another thing. Noah looked calm and ignored 16 Knights' provocation. If there is a plan without risk, then it is naturally better than this, right? Is that so? 16 Knights' mouth raised. Then brother, do you have a better plan than this? There was no doubt that the plan proposed by Ren was decided after discussing with 16 Knights last night. In other words, the person who proposed this plan was 16 Knights. Now, Reverse 16 Knights was issuing a challenge to Noah. He wanted to see if Noah could really come up with a better plan than this. In this regard, Noah just smiled faintly. Actually, I have a gift that allows me to summon an endless number of demons. Noah's words first stunned the people around him, then their eyes lit up. A gift that can summon endless monsters? Black Rabbit said with some excitement. Do you still have such a powerful gift? Mr. Noah. How about the specifics? Ren also asked with some expectation. What kind of strength can those monsters reach? What kind of strength? Noah pondered for a while and then gave such an answer. If a 4-digit number is the level of the famous Asura gods and Buddhas, and a 5-digit number is also a large number of gods and Buddhas, then the number of monsters I can summon should be at least 6 digits, right? At the very least, Noah believed that a level 100 monster would not be any weaker than a level 100 monster like Jard. So, in comparison, level 100 monsters should be able to squeeze into 6 digits. This made Black Rabbit and Ren's heartbeat begin to accelerate. An endless number of 6-digit monsters? Then even if it was to fight against those communities with 5 digits, it was not impossible, right? Under such circumstances, Noah's eyes flashed and suddenly said such a sentence. My plan is to summon a large number of monsters and massacre this 2105380 outer sect. Chapter 1277. At this moment, the entire, no name, room was filled with an extremely heavy and silent atmosphere. With Ren as the leader, including Black Rabbit, Koyoshi, and Haruhi Byayoshi, all of the members of No Name had a sudden change in expression. 16 Knights, on the other hand, focused his gaze on Noah. On his face, the insufferably arrogant smile had long disappeared without a trace. Under this kind of situation, the atmosphere of the No Name room that had become deathly silent became heavier and heavier. There was no other way. If it was said that 16 Knights' proposal of defeat the Demon King was a proposal that would shock people, then Noah's proposal of massacre the outer sect was a proposal that would cause people to not dare to believe. Thus, Ren secretly swallowed a mouthful of saliva, mustered up his courage, and asked a question. No. Mr. Noah, what do you mean by that? I think that my words should be very easy to understand, right? Noah slightly raised his eyes and met Ren's gaze. It's just the literal meaning. Leader Ren, I think that if we want, No Name, to become famous and attract a large number of talents, we don't actually need to use such a dangerous goal like defeat the Demon King as a proposal. As long as I summon a large number of demons and massacre the outer sect, that would be enough. Seeing Noah's extremely calm expression as he said such a proposal that reeked of blood, Ren's hands under the table quietly clenched tightly. His palms were also sweating. Not only Ren, but Black Rabbit's pretty face was also filled with shock. After she reacted, she hurriedly cried out. No. Mr. Noah, Black Rabbit doesn't really understand what you mean. Why? Why would massacring the outer sect make No Name famous and attract a large number of talents? Actually, it's very simple. You all just need to think about it a little and you'll understand. Noah rested his cheek on one hand and rested his elbow on the table. His other hand tapped the table rhythmically with his fingers as he chuckled softly. Think about it. If I were to summon a large number of 6-digit demons to attack this 2105380 outer sect, then, in this outer sect, other than communities like Thousand Eyes who have bases in the higher levels, the rest of the communities would basically be unable to withstand the demon's attack, right? We only need to hide behind the scenes and let the 6-digit demons attack this outer door. When that time comes, there will definitely be a lot of casualties. Noah continued speaking in a voice that was so calm that it sounded a little cruel. Wait until the 2105380 outer gate has a large number of casualties, then we will valiantly appear on stage and wipe out all these evil demons. Then, even if we don't want to be famous, it will be impossible, right? Ren, Kuroto, and Haruai all held their breaths. Hide behind the scenes and control the demons to attack the city, and then after the demons have caused a large number of casualties, pretend to be the righteous side and wipe out all the demons. That would indeed make No Name famous in an instant. However, everyone present felt as if their hearts were tightly gripped, and they couldn't even breathe smoothly. And under such a situation, Noah was still speaking as if nothing had happened. Compared to challenging the Demon King who we don't know if we can win, and if we lose, we will have to pay a painful price. This method undoubtedly has no risk to us. After all, those demons are all summoned by me and controlled by me, so they won't be able to harm us. The ones who will die are just some insignificant residents, right? Other than Ren, Kuroto, and Haruai all clenched their fists under the table. This way, we can become famous without any risk, and also gain the gratitude of those foolish residents who don't know that their family and friends have died in our hands. Why not? Ren, Kuroto, and Haruai all couldn't breathe smoothly, and their breaths suddenly became a little hurried. Moreover, we are the righteous side that wiped out the demons that harmed this city. As the ruler of the hierarchy, it is impossible for White Yiksha to not express his gratitude. Who knows, maybe he will give us a reward. Who knows, maybe we can get a powerful gift to increase our strength. Ren, Kuroto, and Haruai all lowered their heads, and their bodies slightly trembled. Finally, those people whose family and friends were killed, or those whose community was destroyed by the demons, will have a deep impression of us who wiped out the demons and join our community. This way, we will be able to obtain a large number of talents, and achieve our goal. In the heavy space, the sound of rapid breathing began to spread. Noah, however, seemed to not have noticed anything, and continued to speak. That's right. It's best if we can be like Jared, and let the demons target children. That way, we can better arouse the residents' resentment. When we wipe out the demons, their gratitude to us will be greater, and maybe they will even join our community. It's really wonderful. Before he could finish his sentence, Jiufei now could no longer hold it in and cried out loudly. Shut up! The words with power turned into invisible restraints, and instantly covered Noah's body. However, Noah's body suddenly shook, and the invisible restraints were all shaken away, and disappeared without a trace. However, Noah didn't continue speaking. Instead, he glanced at Jiufei Niao and said indifferently, Don't worry. What's wrong? Miss Kuroto. Do you think my proposal is unreasonable? No, it's reasonable, very reasonable. If we do as you say, this community can indeed develop greatly. Kuroto stared at Noah, and her eyes were filled with unprecedented anger and coldness. It's just that, I really didn't expect you to come up with such a proposal, Mr. Noah. I don't like this method. Haruai Hiroyuki lowered his eyes and said softly. I don't want to do it either. Why? Do you feel guilty? Noah smiled, and then looked at Ren. But, without a doubt, this will allow the community to develop greatly, and our wish is to go against the Demon King who destroyed the community, and take back the most important flag, name, and even companions of the community. At this point, Noah stared at Ren and enunciated each and every word clearly. Those companions might be locked up in prison right now and being tortured. They might also be treated as a prize like that child named Letitia. They might even be sold as a commodity. Even so, you still want to consider the safety of others first and consider the means to do so. Ren immediately lowered his head, and fell silent. Kuroto and Haruai Hiroyuki also fell silent, and couldn't speak anymore. Only Black Rabbit, whose pretty face was uncertain, looked like she wanted to say something, but didn't know what to say. In the end, she could only hang her head dejectedly. As for 16 nights, she remained silent from beginning to end, and didn't say a word. The atmosphere was heavy. After a long time, Ren took a deep breath and looked at Noah. Perhaps, if we do according to Mr. Noah's proposal, our community will be able to develop greatly in a short time. Compared to defeating the Demon King, there is no risk, and it will be more efficient. But Ren couldn't help but stand up. If I do this, even if my companions can come back, they will definitely not forgive me. That's right. Black Rabbit seemed to have found an organization, and also stood up, trying to express her thoughts. The feeling of losing companions, family, and friends, Black Rabbit and young Master Ren will understand it best, and so will everyone. We must not let the rest of the outer sect be like us, living in pain and suffering. So, Mr. Noah. Ren's tone became firm. Sorry, I can't accept this proposal. Everyone suddenly fell silent. Is that so? Noah turned his head, but the corner of his mouth raised into an imperceptible arc. I understand, then so be it. Everyone suddenly let out a sigh of relief. On the side, 16 Knights, who had been watching Noah, clearly noticed Noah's imperceptible smile, raised his eyebrows, and also smiled. Chapter 1278. In the end, after some discussion, everyone agreed to Ren's proposal to let No Name become a community with the mission of defeat the Demon King. They would first expand their reputation in the outer sect of 2105380. For this reason, they had to first publicize the mission of No Name. Ren thought that he could ask White Yiksha for help with this. As the leader of the East District, White Yiksha not only had a base in the 4 digits, but he was also a cadre of the super-large business community, Thousand Eyes, that had influence all over the 4 regions. With White Yiksha's power, as long as he said a few words to the people below him, then the people of each branch of Thousand Eyes would publicize the mission of No Name and make it a topic of discussion. For this reason, Ren and Black Rabbit planned to set off together and go to a branch of Thousand Eyes to negotiate with White Yiksha and ask him for help. Although White Yiksha was the leader of the East District and a cadre of Thousand Eyes, there was no reason for him to help a No Name that didn't even have a name or a banner. However, with Black Rabbit, this matter shouldn't be a problem. After all, White Yiksha was a standard pervert. As long as Black Rabbit sacrificed a bit of her body, this matter should be done. For this reason, Black Rabbit agreed with a heart of despair. By the way, this plan was also proposed by 16 Knights in reverse. Therefore, Black Rabbit already hated reverse 16 Knights. In addition to the development of No Name, the matter of the bestowal game that used Letitia as a prize was also brought up. In order to take back the Demon King's companions and combat power, everyone agreed that they had to participate in this bestowal game. For this reason, the participants of this bestowal game were decided by everyone. If there were many people participating, then it would be decided based on the situation. When necessary, everyone would participate. If only one person could participate, then they would choose between Noah and 16 Knights, who had the greatest combat power. This decision made Jiu Yuanyao, who used to be the young miss of a famous conglomerate and had a higher self-esteem than the average person, rather dissatisfied with the competitive Hiroi Buyao who didn't match her appearance. However, Kyuki and Hirohibu Yaichi knew their limits. They knew that in terms of combat power, they were still lacking compared to Noah and 16 Knights reversal. As such, even though they were dissatisfied, Kiyoshi Osaka and Hirohibu Yaichi didn't mention it. Instead, they agreed with this decision. After making these decisions, the meeting was adjourned. Pushing open the door, Noah walked out of the conference room and held Aster's hand as they walked towards the room. As they walked, Noah spoke faintly. "Hey, Aster, Can you not use such misleading words next time? What is Master referring to? Aster didn't even turn his head. He held Noah's hand and walked forward without looking sideways. His expression didn't change in the slightest. Are you referring to when Master sprayed something on me? Can't you just say that I accidentally dripped some saliva on you? Noah felt that this was the first time in his life that he felt so ashamed. Thanks to you, I was almost destroyed by humanity. It's okay. Aster said as if it was a matter of fact. I am Master's sword. I won't let anyone hurt Master. That's not the problem, right? Noah almost face-bombed. Before I will be hurt, first of all, I will have a lot of problems in terms of social survival. It's okay. Aster's face was still expressionless. Master won't always stay in this world. So, even if you can't survive in this world, you can still survive in another world. Fine, I can't win against you. Noah let out a big sigh. Then can you please inform me when you leave my side in the future? It's all thanks to you again. I have the wonderful feat of seeing all the members of the opposite sex in the community naked on the first day I joined. Hearing this, Aster tilted his head. After a while, he spat out 3 words. Are you happy? Is it a question of whether I am happy or not? Just when Noah had the urge to die, a figure appeared in front of him. Yo, little brother. 16 Knights crossed his arms and leaned against the wall. He looked in Noah's direction and grinned. Are you having fun with your loli? Noah stopped and looked straight at 16 Knights. His hand that was holding Aster's hand tightened slightly. Aster immediately understood and closed his eyes. His body emitted a beautiful light and turned into light particles. They gathered in Noah's hand and turned into the shape of a silver dagger. Seeing the small silver sword in Noah's hand, 16 Knights' eyes flashed. It was unknown what he thought of, but he seemed to be deep in thought. Under such circumstances, Noah placed Ace, who had transformed into a small silver sword, back on his waist. As he did so, he asked casually. What? You need something from me? 16 Knights curled his lips, but his eyes were fixed on Noah. Why did you propose such a plan? What do you mean why? Noah curled his lips into a smile. Since it's a plan, it should be proposed and discussed with everyone, right? The problem is, do you really want to discuss it with others? 16 Knights smacked his lips. Undoubtedly, you don't want to use such a plan, right? Oh. Noah raised his eyebrows. Why do you think so? It's very simple. 16 Knights said bluntly. I don't think a person who joined this impoverished community for the sake of helping others would want to carry out such a program. Is that so? Noah was silent for a while and then smiled. Then why do you think I proposed such a plan? That's very simple. 16 Knights looked straight at Noah. You want to know if this community will become unscrupulous and blindly pursue their goals in order to achieve their wishes and goals when they are almost at their wits' end, right? Noah was a little speechless, then he sighed. The so-called ideals and goals can only be called ideals and goals if they are pursued with all their might. However, sometimes, ideals and goals that are too far away may also lead to uncontrollable pursuits, making people blind, impatient, reckless, and even suicidal. 16 Knights continued Noah's words. In order to arouse attention to things that have been neglected, raise objections, and deepen the determination of the path forward for ideals and goals, that is the so-called work of the so-called hero behind the scenes, right? I don't want to be a hero behind the scenes. Noah smiled bitterly. I just don't want to see this community that exists to protect the home that its companions can return to walk into a fork in the road ahead. Just treat it as me satisfying my own personal feelings. Self-satisfaction. 16 Knights closed his eyes, but the corners of his mouth curved into a smile that seemed to be both joyful and happy. Well, then let's treat it as that. Is there anything else? Noah said in annoyance. If there's nothing else, I'm leaving. I still have things to do. Go, go. Reverse 16 Nights waved his hand nonchalantly, as if he was chasing someone away. Noah could only helplessly roll his eyes, then he walked past 16 Nights and walked forward. 16 Nights watched Noah leave, and the smile on his face began to disappear. Although it was only a plan proposed as a warning and confirmation, if that plan was really implemented, it would be effective, right? Recalling the plan proposed by Noah, 16 Nights also showed a rare bitter smile. If he can really achieve his goals at all costs, that guy should have no less than 10 ways to restore this community to its heyday, right? I really don't know what kind of world he used to live in. Chapter 1279. The outer gate of Hakata City 2105380, the residential area, the base of no name. In the base of no name, there is a huge library on the 3rd floor of the main library. This library has the records of the gift game that this community participated in the past, the collection of books in Hakata, and all kinds of biographies related to the existence of Shura gods and Buddhas, and the number is not small. When Ren and Black Rabbit went to look for Byakuya for the promotion of No Name, 16 Nights Retrograde, Joyuen Flying Bird, and Haruhito Hikari went back to their own rooms to do their own things. They seemed to be preparing to recharge their energy for the upcoming game of taking back Letitia's gift. And Noah, under the guidance of Lily, came to the library on the 3rd floor of the main library. Coming to this world is just a matter of yesterday. Regarding the understanding of this place called Hakata, even if Black Rabbit already knew some of the basics, but it is only the basics. In order to better move in this world, Noah still has to do the same as before. First, he needs to collect information, so as not to become a blind person and be surprised and ignorant when encountering any situation. So, Noah came to this library. Holding a book in his hand, Noah leaned against a bookshelf and flipped through it while talking to himself. I don't know if there is a record of the strongest race in Hakata like the Star Spirit. In Hakata, there are all kinds of Shura gods and Buddhas. Those Shura gods and Buddhas are almost the same as the gods mentioned in the various myths and legends that Noah learned in other worlds. Once upon a time, in the world of the God Slayer, in order to better deal with all kinds of God Slayers and disobedient gods, Noah had studied various series of myths and legends. So, for the famous Shura gods and Buddhas in Hakata, Noah knows more than the average person. This is also the preparation for the incarnation of the warrior. After all, although the authority of the warrior could sever the divinity and seal the authority of the gods, it was much more special and powerful than the other incarnations of the authority of Noah's 10 incarnations. However, there were conditions for its use. If he didn't understand the ability he wanted to seal, he wouldn't be able to use it. Because of this, Noah needed to have all kinds of knowledge. I wonder if I can defeat White Yiksha using the warrior avatar. This thought flashed across Noah's mind. Soon after, he did not know whether to laugh or cry. White Yiksha isn't an enemy. I don't know if there's a possibility of a fight. Why do I have to consider whether I can defeat her? Perhaps, this was also the result of Noah's competitive nature. Although he wouldn't feel proud if he won and wouldn't feel depressed if he lost, as expected, no one wanted to lose compared to winning. Not to mention, Noah was also a god slayer. He could be considered a natural warrior, so he was more or less competitive. Forget it, there's no harm in being prepared. Perhaps there really is a chance that we will face the 3 strongest species of Hakata. If we have the knowledge to deal with them, then there won't be any problems. Among the 3 strongest species in the box court, Noah already possessed all the knowledge of the gods and Buddhas that were born with divine knowledge. The only ones left were the star elves and the pure-blooded dragon species, which were also the strongest species. However, the knowledge of the pure-blooded dragon species is quite difficult to prepare. The star elves referred to the main sprites of celestial bodies above the stellar level. It was not an exaggeration to treat them as the celestial bodies themselves. Existences like this were basically classified as gods in the world of the God Slayer. Therefore, Noah also had a portion of the star elves' knowledge. As for the rest, even if he didn't have it, it was impossible for celestial bodies above the stellar level to not be famous. Noah only needed to search and he should be able to find the records of most of the star elves. However, the pure-blooded dragon species were a little troublesome. This was because the pure-blooded dragon species were not born, but happened. At a certain moment, a powerful force gathered without warning and a species appeared out of thin air. That was the way the pure-blooded dragon species were born. Therefore, the pure-blooded dragon species would only give birth to a pure-blooded descendant when it was a single reproduction. If they mated with a different species and used the method of reproduction to breed the descendant would only be a subdragon. If it was a pure-blooded dragon species that had existed for a long time, then I should still be able to find the recorded knowledge. The problem is that the newborn pure-blooded dragon species should not be recorded, right? Noah thought about this while continuing to flip through the books in his hand. In short, it's better to be prepared. If it's some other famous existence, I'll find a record and write it down. With such a thought in mind, Noah used his extraordinary memory and comprehension to absorb the water known as knowledge like a sponge as usual. He read until the sky turned dark. It wasn't until the sky turned dark that Noah stood up from the ground. Around him, there were already a lot of books piled up. Wren and the Black Rabbit should be back soon. Noah stretched. Let's continue tomorrow. Just as Noah was about to leave the library and return to the top, a series of hurried footsteps sounded. He saw that Wren and the Black Rabbit were leading a group of no-name members all squeezed into the library and quickly walked over. Mr. Noah. The Black Rabbit looked like he was about to cry as he said this. Lady Letitia's gift game has been postponed. Hearing this, Noah was slightly stunned. He turned his head and looked at 16 Knights. When 16 Knights nodded his head with a face full of displeasure, his face also sank. The courtyard at night was undoubtedly very beautiful. In the sky, almost every star could be seen very clearly, and they were shining brightly. The moonlight even shone on the entire courtyard, covering the courtyard with a layer of silver frost. The street lamps gave off a faint light. There was no sign of anyone around at all. A peaceful atmosphere filled the entire space, making people feel at peace. Here, there were no dazzling neon lights. Here, there were no cars that ran on the road day and night. Here, there were no excessive laughter and entertainment. Here, there were no annoying noises or crowds. To be able to see a sky full of stars in a place where humans lived, for people who lived in modern times, it was a very surprising thing. Unfortunately, Noah and his group, who came out of No Name's base, did not have the leisure to admire the stars and the moon. Instead, they rushed to the Branch of Thousand Eyes as fast as they could. And in the Branch of Thousand Eyes, a clerk seemed to have been waiting for a long time. In a businesslike tone, he said this to Noah and his group. Everyone, Lord White Yiksha has been waiting for you for a long time. In other words, White Yiksha already knew that No Name's group would come. Please come in with me. The clerk led the group of No Name members into the store. Entering the store, passing through the courtyard, Noah and his group were led by the clerk to the building in the courtyard. Inside, White Yiksha sat at the head of the table. He was still holding the paper fan in his hand. His eyes were closed, and he was fanning himself expressionlessly. However, he did not know if it was Noah's illusion. Noah felt that White Yiksha's mood seemed to be extremely unhappy. The reason for this was probably because of the other person in the room. A man with flaxen hair, wearing a snakeskin top, and a thin body sat opposite White Yiksha. He had a frivolous and annoying smile on his face. Perhaps because he heard the footsteps, the man turned his head and looked at the door. In the next second, the man completely focused his gaze on the black rabbit. He opened his eyes and cheered in surprise. Whoa, whoa, whoa. A rabbit. It's really a rabbit. Although I heard that there are rabbits here, I didn't expect it to be true. As he said this, the man's gaze swept up and down Black Rabbit's body as if he wanted to lick it all over. This made Black Rabbit hide behind Noah in disgust. You're here. Only then did White Yiksha open his eyes. You're here at the right time. I know that you're here because of the sudden cancellation of Thousand Eyes' gift game. However, that was completely the decision of this upstart in front of you. So, if you have any questions, then go directly to him. Chapter 1280. White Yiksha's words made Noah and the others turn their gazes to the frivolous man. However, the other party didn't even look at Noah and the others. He continued to size up Black Rabbit, and his gaze became more and more unscrupulous. In this regard, Black Rabbit's expression also became more and more unsightly, but there was nothing he could do. He could only shrink his body behind Noah's back and remain silent. Under such circumstances, White Yiksha slowly opened his mouth. His name is Luos. You might not know him, but if we talk about the community of Perseus, you should be able to understand, right? Perseus. 16 Knights Reverse, Jiuyuki, and Hiroi Hikari all looked at Luos with some surprise. Then, White Yiksha slowly opened his mouth. He is the leader of Perseus. At this moment, 16 Knights Reverse, Jiuyuki, and Hiroi Hikari all frowned. Not to mention the others, even Noah also frowned. Perseus. The Chinese translation was Perseus. In Greek mythology, he cut off the head of the snake-haired demoness Medusa and offered it to Athena, the goddess of wisdom. He was a hero who had many magical items. Once, in the world of the God Slayer, Noah had a dispute with Perseus, who was the incarnation of the god of disobedience, and had cut him down with his sword. And in the many boxes where the Asura gods and Buddhas ran rampant, the famous hero Perseus also existed. Here, not only did the hero named Perseus exist, but he also established a community that directly used his name as the name of the organization, which was called Perseus. And this community named Perseus was represented by the descendants of Perseus. Since Luos was the leader of Perseus, it meant that this guy who looked like a spoiled brat was the descendant of the hero Perseus. Of course, this was not the reason why Noah and the others frowned. There was only one reason that made Noah and the others frown. That was, the community named Perseus was under the banner of Thousand Eyes, just like White Yiksha. As mentioned earlier, Thousand Eyes was a community of people. In Thousand Eyes, half of them were direct subordinates like Bayasha, while the other half were members of the community under the banner. The community named Perseus existed as the cadres of Thousand Eyes in the form of a community. In other words, this prodigal son was White Yiksha's companion in name. Moreover, the community in charge of organizing the gift game with Letitia as the prize was Perseus, a member of Thousand Eyes. In other words, Letitia was Perseus' property. Therefore, White Yiksha got Noah's group to look for Luos. However, Luos did not even look at Noah and the rest. He only looked at the black rabbit with a lustful gaze. That look completely displayed the word prodigal son vividly. Then, Noah directly looked at White Yiksha. Why did you suddenly cancel the game? How can the gift game, which dominates everything in the box court, be cancelled just like that? If there is a legitimate reason, then it can't be helped even if it is cancelled, White Yiksha said sarcastically. Of course, for personal reasons, there are people who casually cancel the gift game and damage their reputation. As long as the reward and benefits are so high that they do not hesitate to damage the flag and name of the community, then there will still be such despicable people. From White Yiksha's tone, it was clear that she was also very dissatisfied with Luo's canceling the game. Moreover, White Yiksha's relationship with Luo seemed to be quite bad. However, everyone could understand. No one would have a good impression of a prodigal son who did not hide his desires and could casually do things that damaged his reputation. Luo himself was naturally aware of this. No. It should be said that this prodigal son only knew that White Yiksha was very displeased with him. Thus, Luo finally retracted his gaze from the black rabbit and smiled in a non-committal manner. I cancelled it after getting the consent of the scheduled contestant. I have already fulfilled the minimum etiquette, right? Is that so? White Yiksha sneered. Are you sure you used etiquette to get the contestant to agree to cancel it? Then it has nothing to do with the ruler of the East District, right? Luo smiled proudly. Anyway, that vampire is my possession. I can do whatever I want. Is there a problem? I see. Do you think there is no problem? White Yiksha was so angry that she laughed. Casually cancelling the gift game and damaging the reputation of Thousand Eyes is enough to demote Perseus, right? Maybe. Luo shrugged. However, that has nothing to do with you. I am only here to take back my possession. Speaking of this, Luo looked at Noah and the others and suddenly sneered. However, that guy is really an idiot. He actually gave his gift to the Demon King just because he wanted a period of freedom and came down to the lower levels to see his companions. He really can't be any more stupid. Luo's words shocked Noah and the others. You. What did you say? Black Rabbit came out from behind Noah and said in disbelief. You're saying that in order to meet us, Lady Letitia gave up her gift. Otherwise, how do you think that vampire who was reduced to a prisoner of the Demon King and was taken away from your community would come here to meet you? Luo curled his lips. Although pure-blooded vampires are all existences with divinity, that guy used his own divinity as the price in exchange for temporary freedom. He has less than 1/10 of his strength left, which is really unpleasant. If that vampire's divinity still existed, the price should be much higher, right? Price? Reverse 16 Knight suddenly raised his head and stared at Luo. You said price. Why? Don't you know why I cancelled the gift game? Luo showed an impudent smile. Then let me tell you. Because someone wanted to buy her at a high price, I cancelled the gift game and prepared to sell her outside the box. Whoa. Ren took a deep breath. Outside the box. Do you know what you are doing? Black Rabbit couldn't hide his agitation and shouted. Vampires can only live in the box with curtains. If they walk out of the box, they will not be able to move under the sun. Hearing this, Luo directly replied. What has that got to do with me? You. Zhou Yuao and Haruai Biao's eyes were filled with anger. Just as Zhou Yuao and Haruai Biao were about to step forward, Noah extended his hand and stopped them. He looked at Luo with a calm expression. What? Luo squinted his eyes. What are you looking at? It's nothing. Noah smiled. I just don't like you. Is that so? Luo's smile didn't change, but his eyes didn't smile. You are just a mere no-name, you are quite daring. Because I am just a mere no-name, no matter what I do, this community at the bottom of the hierarchy won't suffer any losses. Noah said with a smile that didn't look like a smile. Unlike the famous Perseus. Undoubtedly, this community was built by a famous hero, but it was defeated by a spoiled brat. Sure enough, when you have a son, you lose your father. The smile on Luos's face disappeared. Kid. Luos stared at Noah with a murderous look in his eyes. Are you planning to provoke me? What? Does the spoiled brat want to prove that even a rotten person can get angry? Noah glanced at Luos. Save it. You are only suited to eat and play, not to fight and kill. Go home and sleep. Chapter 1281. Actually, Noah's words were not wrong. Luos was a typical hedonistic son, an idiot who spent all his time on eating, drinking, and having fun. Luos' ancestor, who was also the hero Perseus, was a rather famous legendary character. In Greek mythology, after the hero Perseus completed all his achievements, under the guidance of the gods, he ascended to the sky and became a constellation. The constellation that Perseus became was the famous immortal constellation. And in this world, Perseus, who was believed to have ascended to the sky and become a constellation, was actually invited to the box court after completing his final achievements. From there, he created a community called Perseus. In other words, at the beginning, Perseus was not a community under the command of Thousand Eyes. In the box court that gathered all kinds of Asuras, gods, and Buddhas, communities like Perseus that were created by legendary figures were not in the minority. However, after a long period of time, some of the original organizations were annihilated in the long river of history, while some sought protection from other communities after their power weakened, and became their subordinates. The Perseus that Luos led was under the command of Thousand Eyes, and was able to establish a base in the outer sect of the 5 digits. It was because of the backing of Thousand Eyes that Perseus was able to survive until now. However, ever since Luos took over Perseus, the situation of this famous community took a turn for the worse. The reason was because Luos was only interested in women, money, and eating, drinking, and having fun. He was a vulgar hedonist. This man did not care about the affairs of the community at all. Even if the documents of the community were piled up like a mountain in the office, Luos did not even look at them. No matter how strong the community was, under Luos's uncaring circumstances, it was impossible for there to be no problems. However, Luos believed that this was because Perseus did not have the ability to stay in the 5 digits. With an uncaring attitude, he proposed to move the community's base down a level. Luos believed that after reaching the 6 digits, with the ability of the old 5 digits community, they would definitely be able to stand firm. At that time, Luos could continue to eat, drink, and be merry for the rest of his life. Undoubtedly, when Luos took over Perseus, he also inherited many powerful gifts from his ancestors. If he wanted to stay in the 5 digits, it was definitely not impossible. However, Luos did not even have the slightest intention of letting Perseus continue to flourish. He monopolized so many powerful gifts, but did not contribute to the development of the community. He did not even carry out any work, leaving Perseus to fend for itself. This was also the reason why they didn't care about the reputation of Thousand Eyes, and directly cancelled the gift game with Letitia as the prize. They sold Letitia out of the box. This man did not care about the status and reputation of Perseus. Therefore, Luos, who indifferently proposed to move the base of the community down a level, did not care about the protection of Thousand Eyes. He did not intend to continue to be under Thousand Eyes' command. Therefore, Noah's words were completely correct. Unfortunately, the so-called hedonistic son of a rich family only knew how to eat, drink, play, and bully others. With regards to Noah's unrestrained mockery, Luos did not care about the content. He only cared about Noah's arrogant attitude. At that moment, Luos's face was filled with anger. He suddenly stood up and stared at Noah. Just a mere and no name, do you really think that you can ride on my head without saying anything? Indeed, as a 7-digit community, compared to a 5-digit big shot, I am just an insignificant character. Not to mention that we don't even have a flag or a name. Noah slightly raised his eyes and said with an unfathomable smile. However, as a subordinate of 1,000 Eyes, aren't you also indifferent to the loss of your superior's reputation? My level, compared to you who was able to stay in the 5 digits for so long because of the protection of 1,000 Eyes, and now you are so ungrateful that you don't care about the protection of 1,000 Eyes, I should be considered not bad, right? Luce's face became extremely ugly. But, in the next moment, Luce laughed. I understand now. You want to provoke me into a duel and make me agree to the bestowment game. Then, you will use that vampire as a trophy to prevent me from selling him to the outside world, right? Hearing this, Noah was stunned at first, then he could not help but laugh out loud. That uncontrollable laughter made the smile on Luo's face twitch. The anger in his eyes could not be concealed. What are you laughing at? What are you laughing at? Noah sneered. I'm laughing at you for thinking too much, second-generation ancestor. Not only are you not suitable for killing, you are not even suitable for using your brain. It is better for you to obediently play your role as a hedonistic son of a rich family and stop embarrassing yourself. Bastard! Luce finally could not hold back his anger and pulled out a card from his pocket. It was the bestowment card. Clank! The bestowment card in Luce's hand emitted a blinding light. The light gradually condensed in the air and twisted into the shape of a sickle. Luce reached out his hand and grabbed the sickle-shaped light, causing it to explode. In the next moment, a sickle-shaped sword appeared in Luce's hand. In Greek mythology, the hero Perseus, who was given the mission to destroy the Gorgon Medusa, was given several items. The Hermes boots that allowed him to fly. The helmet of Hades that allowed him to become invisible. The snake hunter's sickle that could kill gods. Also, after killing Medusa, the goddess shield that was embedded in Medusa's head. These items with magical abilities were all inherited by Luce, the descendant of Perseus. At this moment, the sickle-shaped sword in Luce's hand was the snake hunter's sickle that cut off the Gorgon Medusa's head. Be careful. Black Rabbit, Joyuen Osaka, Haruhito Hikari, and the others who didn't expect Luce to suddenly take out a weapon exclaimed. Lowly person who doesn't even have a name. Luce shouted furiously. I'll let you know who you're talking to with that mouth of yours. After saying that, Luce raised the sickle-shaped sword in his hand without any hesitation. The sickle-shaped sword cut through the air like a cold light and ruthlessly slashed in Noah's direction. At this moment, White Yiksha and 16 Knights narrowed their eyes. Only Noah's dark eyes flickered slightly, and a mocking and triumphant smile appeared on his face. Clank! Accompanied by a crisp sound, the sickle-shaped sword that slashed down like moonlight was directly pinched by 2 fingers and stopped in midair. What? Luce's expression changed. On the other hand, Noah happened to be the opposite. He raised his head, met Luce's gaze, and smiled softly. Now, even if I kill you, it's just self-defense. It's not considered a crime, right? When this sentence came out of Noah's mouth, Luce finally understood Noah's plan. Yes. Noah was indeed purposely angering Luce. However, Noah angered Luce not because he wanted to use this as an excuse to duel with Luce and take back Letitia. Instead, he wanted Luce to make a move and then kill this spoiled brat in the name of self-defense. You. Luce felt a chill run down his spine. Unfortunately, it was too late to react now. This place is too small. Noah gripped his scythe-shaped sword tightly as he spoke nonchalantly. Let's go somewhere else. After saying that, Noah suddenly turned around and kicked Luce's abdomen. Bang! In the muffled sound, Luce was directly kicked out and crashed into the wall. Chapter 1282. Bang! The wall of the 1,000 Eyes store suddenly exploded, and the debris shot out like bullets in all directions. Inside the wall, Luo's flew out involuntarily with a sharp piercing sound. Damn it! Feeling the pain in his abdomen, Luo's face was completely filled with anger. That bastard, he actually dared to attack me. These words had just sounded out when a figure suddenly flashed in front of Luo's. Once again, it was accompanied by a whip shadow as a kick landed heavily on the side of Luo's waist. Bang! The terrifying force that couldn't be matched by human strength exploded on Luo's waist, making Luo's groan. His body was like a kite with a broken string, rubbing against the air as he flew out in the whistling wind. Like an afterimage, Luo's was sent flying out of the street in midair. Like a meteor falling from the sky, he crashed into an empty field in the outskirts of the city, stirring up a thick cloud of dust. At this time, another figure flew over from the horizon like a meteor and floated in midair. Noah lowered his head and looked at the thick cloud of dust that rose up like a mushroom cloud. Floating in midair, he narrowed his eyes. In the middle of the thick cloud of dust, Luo struggled to get up from the ground. He held his waist and looked at Noah with bloodshot eyes full of anger. A member of the lowly community that doesn't even have a name dares to treat me like this? What? The son of the hero highness thinks that 2 kicks aren't enough, right? Noah smirked. However, that's true. As a high-level life form, you can still stand up after being kicked twice by me with all my strength. It seems that eating, drinking, and playing didn't weaken your body. I'll honestly praise you on this point. The hero in Greek mythology, named Perseus, was the son of the main god, Zeus. In other words, Perseus was also a god. After coming to the box, Perseus only chose a human as his partner. Originally, it was impossible for gods and humans to give birth to children, as they were 2 different life forms. However, those who were born by twisting this unreasonable rule would become an existence of a higher level than the original life form. They would be known as the god race, or demigod, as a higher level life form. Luo's was such an existence. In addition, as an ancestor, Perseus had achieved many achievements that humans could not achieve and obtained an extremely high level of spirit lattice. This spirit lattice was inherited by Luo's. In other words, not only was Luo's a high-level life form, but he also had a high-level spiritual core. Even with Noah's extraordinary physical strength, he still couldn't make such an existence lose its ability to fight with just a few kicks. That's right. Noah smiled mockingly. As a punching bag, you're qualified. The word successfully ignited the rage in Luo's heart. Don't be too arrogant. Despicable Wu Ming. As Luo's roared furiously, a pair of shining wings suddenly unfurled from the pair of boots on his feet, allowing him to slowly float into the air. Other than Hermes' boots, what else could it be? I'll make you regret it. Bastard! With such fury, the pair of boots on Luo's feet suddenly flapped. With its cheese sound, his body shot towards Noah like a gust of wind. Seeing this, Noah raised his eyebrows and quickly took 2 steps back in the air. At this moment, Luo's had already turned into a black shadow and swept in front of Noah. The scythe-shaped sword in his hand was like a sharp blade, exuding an eerie chill as it directly slashed towards Noah's head. However, almost at the same time, a fist wrapped in a dazzling vortex of air tore through space and heavily collided with the scythe-shaped sword. Clang! The collision between the fist and the scythe-shaped sword actually caused a sound of metal clashing, causing a powerful ripple of wind to spread out, causing the entire atmosphere to become chaotic. Hiya! Luo's let out a furious roar and swung the scythe-shaped sword in his hand, wildly slashing towards Noah's head. However, in the face of Luo's attack, Noah only slightly tilted his body and moved a small distance to the right. The scythe-shaped sword that was swinging towards him like a windmill landed on empty air. After missing his attack, the anger in Luo's eyes intensified. The scythe-shaped sword in his hand suddenly danced, bringing about streaks of sharp shadows that enveloped Noah's entire body like a storm. However, instead of retreating, a hand suddenly extended forward. Like a fallen leaf in a storm, it lightly avoided the streaks of sharp shadows and directly extended towards one of the streaks of sharp shadows. Ding! In the next moment, a crisp sound was heard. The dancing scythe-shaped sword suddenly froze. Luo's face also changed slightly. As for the hand that suddenly stretched out, it used 2 fingers to clamp down on the scythe-shaped sword that was slashing down like a storm a second ago, firmly fixing it in the air. In the legends, the scythe-shaped sword that could even chop off the head of the immortal snake-haired demon Medusa and even kill the gods, in the hands of someone who only knows how to wave it around, is it only at this level? Tightly clamping down on the famous weapon, Noah cast a pitying and mocking gaze at Luo's, whose face had changed slightly. What a waste of God's gift. Shut up. Luo's face was flushed red as he roared in a low voice. He actually ignored the scythe-shaped sword that was tightly clamped by Noah and raised his fist. With a whistling wind, his fist directly smashed towards Noah's face. There was almost no technique involved in this attack. It was like a gangster in a gang fight. He did not consider whether he would hit a vital point or other problems. He only used all his strength and directly punched towards his opponent's face. This extremely childish attack made Noah's face reveal a cold smile and disappointment. You really are just an ignorant and incompetent second generation. Saying this, Noah did not even bother to dodge as he watched the fist with a whistling wind coming towards his face. Seeing this, Luo's could not help but be overjoyed. He suddenly increased the strength of his fist and viciously punched towards Noah's face. Although it was an extremely childish attack, but with the help of his high life force and high spirit lattice, just the strength of the attack alone was enough to cause a dent in the chest of a normal person. Even if it was Noah, he would not be able to avoid the pain if he was hit. Therefore, when the fierce wind rushed towards Noah along with the fist, Noah's eyes flashed. He suddenly clenched one of his hands into a fist and silently streaked across the air, colliding violently with Luo's fist. Pang! Following a muffled sound, a powerful ripple of energy spread out rapidly. It was like a shock wave, but also like a rolling sound wave. It directly shook in all directions. Luo's could only feel a terrifying force gushing out from the fist like a tidal wave, slamming heavily into his body. Dong! Amidst the impact that could not be heard by others, Luo's once again became a kite with a broken string. He fell from mid-air and smashed onto the ground. Luo's face flushed red as he spat out a mouthful of blood with a poochit sound. Why? Luo's clutched his aching chest and raised his head with difficulty. He looked in the direction of Noah and shouted in disbelief. Why can't a mere human win? Noah looked down at Luo's, who was lying on the ground. His eyes were filled with disdain that had never been there before. Then, Noah said, "That's right. No matter how good your innate conditions are, you are still just a second-generation rich kid. Idiot." The most direct insult and humiliation finally made Luo's go crazy. Despicable fellow. I will definitely make you regret this. Luo's roared crazily as he violently tore off an ornament on a short necklace around his neck. That ornament was in the shape of a gorgon's head. Black Rabbit and White Yiksha, who had just arrived at the scene, saw this scene and their expressions changed abruptly. Black Rabbit shouted out loud. Not good. Mr. Noah. Stop him quickly. Chapter 1283. Not good. Mr. Noah. Stop him. Almost at the same time as Black Rabbit shouted, the snake-haired banshee's head ornament that Luo's ripped off his neck emitted a dazzling light. Clang! Amidst the vibrations in the atmosphere, the dazzling light that bloomed in the entire space was a crimson color like blood. The bright red light bloomed on Luo's gift, and it flashed in a way that reminded people of starlight. Waves of light vibrated as it flashed, and it surged in all directions like a tide. Holding up such a dazzling light, Luos declared loudly. "Come out! Arjol!" At this moment, the light in Luos's hand suddenly soared into the sky like a pillar of light, rushing into the sky and into the clouds. Wang! In the next moment, the entire sky suddenly trembled as if the light from before was reflected back. The bright red pillar of light shook the space and fell from the sky. In the blink of an eye, it hit the ground. Dong! It was as if something heavy had fallen and smashed onto the ground. The entire space seemed to have been shaken. The tremor caused the bright red light to cover the entire place in an instant. Everyone, including Noah, reflexively raised their hands and blocked in front of them. After an unknown amount of time, the dazzling light slowly subsided. However, the hearts of everyone present trembled slightly. This was because an extremely shocking sense of oppression shrouded the entire space. Soon after, such a voice resounded across the entire world. Woo 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 woo. It was like a sharp cry, but also like a baby's cry. It was a sharp cry that humans could not understand at all. Along with such a sharp cry, a figure was imprinted in everyone's eyes. It was a female. No. To be more precise, it should be a creature that was similar to a female. Her body was tied with rings and belts used for capturing. Her head was covered with messy hair that resembled snakes and pythons. Her skin looked like it had been sucked dry of water and was purplish-brown. There were no pupils in his eyes, only a red color that made people's hair stand on end. Such a female creature was like an animal. Her 4 limbs were on the ground, and she slowly raised her ghoulish face and her upper body, letting out an extremely ear-piercing scream. Woo 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 woo. The scream that was completely incomprehensible to human ears resounded through the sky, turning into a shockwave that shook the surroundings. Noah, who was standing not far in front of the unknown creature, directly bore the brunt of the storm-like sound wave. His robes fluttered wildly, but his expression didn't change at all. He stared intently at the woman who was screaming like a mad beast and muttered to himself, "That's right. So that's how it is. This is the gift that has protected Perseus for so long in place of the skull and shield." It was not only Noah. In the distance, White Yiksha and 16 knights, who had personally witnessed Luo summon an unidentified female, were similarly speechless. That idiot actually used that in this place. White Yiksha's expression became extremely ugly. If that thing is allowed to cause a ruckus here, this outer door will probably all turn into stone, right? Stone. Reverse 16 knights also smacked his lips. In other words, that is indeed the star that Perseus controls, right? Seeing White Yiksha and Reverse 16 knights talking about something that she did not understand, Zhou Yuan Fei now asked. What are you talking about? Petrification. Star. What do you mean? Don't you understand? Milady. Reverse 16 knights stared closely at the terrifying woman who set off the shockwave with her scream and spoke in a low voice. Then, you should know, in the legend, the weapon that Perseus who was given the mission of curing the snake-haired demon Medusa, right? I know. Haruhito Hikari replied. The hero Perseus who was given the mission of curing Medusa received 4 weapons, namely helmet, boots, shield, and scythe, a total of 4. That's right, the helmet is the helmet of Hades who can turn invisible, the boots are the boots of Hermes who can fly, the shield is the shield of Athena, and the scythe is the scythe sword in that guy's hand. Reverse 16 knights explained. Relying on these weapons, Perseus was able to cut off the head of the snake-haired demon Medusa and was able to use the petrification power of the head to accomplish more feats. And since that Perseus was invited to the box court and even created a community, then these weapons, which are gifts, should all be inherited by that incompetent young master, right? Reverse 16 knights narrowed his eyes. It's just that, in the legend, after Perseus completed his feats and ascended to the sky, before turning into a constellation, he gave the snake-haired demon's head together with the shield to Athena. That's how the shield with the snake-haired demon's head embedded in it came into being. Jiu Fei now said with some uncertainty. In other words, that upstart only inherited the helmet, the boots, and a scythe, these 3 gifts. The one who answered this question was not Reverse 16 Knights, but Black Rabbit. No, it's not like that. Black Rabbit quietly clenched his sweaty palms and said in a low voice. Although he lost the head and shield, Perseus, who ascended to the immortal constellation, received a new gift of combining the head and shield. In the immortal constellation, there is a star that has been called the Demon Star since ancient times. Reverse 16 Knights said. That star is located in the immortal constellation, where the snake-haired demon's head is in the hands of Perseus. It's called Argel. Argel. Haruhito Hikari was surprised. Isn't that the name that Luos just shouted? That's right. White Yiksha stared at the terrifying woman who was screaming. So, in place of the head and shield, Perseus received the ability to petrify. The star that plays the role of the head, as the shield of the community, is under the control of Perseus. In the many Asura gods and Buddhas, not only did they have ownership of the land, even the stars in the sky had their own ownership, which was also the so-called sovereignty. Among them, the sun, which represented the most gods, Buddhas, and myths, was divided into 24 sun sovereigns by the 2 celestial bodies of the 12 signs of the zodiac, and 12 equatorial stars, on the sun's orbit. And as long as one held the sovereignty of these stars and constellations, then, the person who held the sovereignty could summon the star spirit and god that represented the star, making them listen to their orders and perform their servitude. In place of the head and shield, the community named Perseus received the sovereignty of the devil star located in the immortal constellation at the position of the snake-haired demon's head Argel. The woman that Luos summoned was one of the strongest races in the box, the devil star spirit on the immortal constellation Argel. Woo 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 woo. As if to prove everyone's thoughts, the devil star spirit named Argel let out a sharp cry, and her entire body suddenly expanded a little. Paw! One of the belts that bound Argel's body directly snapped. Paw 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 paw. As if it caused a chain reaction, a few belts snapped one after another. At this moment, Argel's entire body swelled up, becoming as large as a black bear. Go! Luos ordered angrily. Kill that brat. Argel! Argel suddenly raised her head and looked at Noah, a pair of bright red eyes flashing with red light. Bang! With a loud stomping sound, the star spirit named Argel suddenly shot towards Noah's direction like an arrow released from a bow. One of her hands was wrapped in strands of leather, forming the shape of a claw. In the next moment, the giant claw that was like a bear's paw rubbed against the air, bringing a sharp sound of breaking through the air. In a flash, it flashed down and struck towards Noah's direction, causing the space to tremble. Dong! The sound wave that shook the heavens, accompanied by the impact that caused the ground to tremble, surged out violently. Chapter 1284. Boom! A thunderous sound transformed into a terrifying sound wave, accompanied by a shock wave that swept out crazily. Under such a terrifying shock wave, the entire ground trembled at this moment, causing a huge crack to rapidly spread out from the center of the shock wave until it reached a distance of 100 meters. Whoa! Under such a shocking shock wave, Black Rabbit, Jiu Yuao, and Haruai Biyai Chi blocked the incoming shock wave while letting out a somewhat depressed sound. It was obvious that they were feeling quite uncomfortable. Only White Yiksha and 16 Knights still stood in place with a calm expression. They directly endured the incoming shockwave, but their gazes were firmly fixed in front of them, unwilling to move away for even a moment. Ha 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 ha. Under such circumstances, Luos, who was floating in the air, let out a carefree and delightful laugh. Did you see that? This is Argyll's power. A mere nameless scoundrel can't touch it at all. Ha 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 ha. It had to be said that Luo's triumphant laughter was indeed quite ear-piercing. As a result, just as the laughter sounded, a shocking shockwave shook the center of the field, blowing away the surrounding sand and dust. Luo's laughter came to an abrupt end. White Yiksha, 16 Knights, Black Rabbit, Jiu Yuao, and Haruai Buyai all slightly widened their eyes. In front of Argyll, who had become as huge as a black bear, stood a shield. A huge shield that was like a city wall, inlaid with decorative petals. Argyll's attack that could shake the ground landed on such a shield and was blocked. Immediately after, a voice sounded from behind the shield. Star Spirit. This voice carried a bit of battle intent. Interesting. As soon as the voice fell, the huge shield immediately distorted and disappeared like a mirage. Noah, who was standing as straight as before, cast his gaze on Argyll, and the corners of his mouth curled up into a smile. Wang. Suddenly, a golden ripple fluctuated around Noah and covered Noah's entire body. Within it, there were all kinds of swords, knives, spears, halberds, and other relics that were like arrows on a bow were ejected from the golden ripple. They turned into streams of light and landed on Argyll's body. Bang, 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 bang. One by one, the relics landed on Argyll's body like cannonballs. The impact was so violent that it felt like an explosion. Argyll was sent flying and smashed into the ground not far away. Although you're just a spoiled brat who inherited it because of his ancestors' achievements, no matter what, you're still one of the most powerful species in Hecate, right? Noah looked at Argyll, who was on the ground, with a rare bold smile on his face. So, show me the power of the most powerful species in Hecate. Then, all kinds of relics, such as knives, swords, spears, halberds, and other relics, were ejected from the golden ripple one after another. They were like lasers with meteor-like brilliance, flashing through the air and enveloping Argyll like raindrops. Ah, 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 ah. Argyll let out an ear-piercing shriek. He raised his arm and swung it as if he was swinging a huge stone plate, swinging the rain of relics that were coming at him. Clang, 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 clang. His huge palm, which was as thick as a bear's paw, smashed the relics that were coming at him one by one. Argyll was like a wild beast. He swung his huge palm and smashed the relics that were coming at him one by one. At the same time, he moved forward in the rain of relics, trying to rush to Noah's front. Unfortunately, Argyll obviously did not have the physical ability to break the rules like 16 Knights. When the Devil Star Spirit smashed down the 27th precious artifact, a long spear suddenly flew over and landed on the hand that was swinging up. Clang! Amidst the crisp sound of steel clashing against steel, the powerful impact stopped Argyll in his tracks. Clang! Clang! The two relics that came after the spear made Argyll lose his balance and take 2 steps back. Swish, 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 swish. At the same time, the rain of relics was like bullets that were fired at Argyll's body. Poochie! A long sword pierced Argyll's shoulder. Poochie! 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 Following closely behind, the relics pierced through Argyll's arms, legs, and waist. Woo, 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 woo. Argyll let out a painful shriek that shook the entire atmosphere under the night sky. Impossible. Luos cried out in disbelief. How could Argyll not be able to catch some weapons? Even if they were bestowed weapons, it's impossible for Argyll to not be able to catch more than 20 of them. While saying that, Lois seemed to have thought of something. His gaze turned fearful as he looked at the relics that popped out of the golden ripples around Noah. Could it be that those are all bestowed weapons with Godhead? Godhead. It was a gift that could upgrade a species to the highest level. With Godhead, not only could one gain an explosive upgrade in life level, but it could also upgrade one's spiritual level to the highest level. As a result, the rest of one's gifts would be greatly enhanced. In the entire box court, it was a must-have gift for a powerhouse. For example, Letitia was a purebred vampire with Godhead. In the past, she was even one of the devil kings who wreaked havoc in the box court. However, after being stripped of her Godhead, Letitia's strength was reduced to less than 1/10 of her original strength. One could imagine how precious and powerful a gift called Godhead was. Not only could life have Godhead, but weapons could also be bestowed with Godhead. For example, in Norse mythology, the main god Odin had a godly spear called Gungnir. In Greek mythology, the godly king Zeus had a godly shield called Aegis. Another example would be the divine weapon wielded by the heavenly emperor Sakra of Hinduism, the Vajra. These were the most famous examples of Godhead weapons, and each of them had terrifying power. Noah's relics naturally did not have the Godhead bestowed by the gods of this world. However, these treasures were the same as the most famous Godhead weapons. They originated from myths and legends and were wielded by gods and heroes that only existed in myths and legends. Regardless of whether it was in terms of ability or power, there was no difference. Therefore, in the box court, the relics were Godhead weapons. Impossible. It's impossible. Looking at the space around Noah and the relics that came out of the golden ripples, Luo started to feel fear. How is it possible for someone to have so many Godhead blessings? And all of them can be used. As mentioned before, weapons were materialized gifts. Although these gifts were not like personal gifts that directly fused with the soul and could not be taken away, they were extremely picky about the user. Those who could not meet the requirements would not be able to use the powerful Godhead weapons. Needless to say, even some Asura gods and Buddhas weren't able to freely use weapons bestowed with Godhead-grade weapons. Now, however, Noah was throwing divine bestowed weapons that were absolute treasures to Arjul as if they didn't cost anything. Who's the nouveau riche here? Not to mention Luo's, even White Yiksha's eyes almost popped out of their sockets. Why are there so many Godhead bestowed weapons? How is this possible? No. It's impossible. Even Black Rabbit's lips were trembling. How could someone have so many Godhead weapons? Are they all replicas? Godhead weapons. No wonder it took so much effort to send those weapons flying. 16 Knight's eyes flashed and he clenched his fists tightly. However, if those are really Godhead weapons, it means that the gifts of those weapons have not been released yet, right? That guy actually dared to hide such a huge trump card for me. Without a doubt. At this moment, everyone was shocked. Chapter 1285. Whoosh 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 whoosh. Amidst the tearing sound of the wind, the treasures that belonged to the famous Godhead weapons in this world flashed across the space like lightning and shot toward Arjur like raindrops. Chirp 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 chirp. Arjur let out a shrill cry that sounded like he had gone mad. He kept swinging his huge palms that were as rough as a bear's paw at the treasures that were shooting toward him. Clang 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 clang. Amidst the clanging sound of steel, the treasures that were shooting toward him like lightning were smashed away by Arjur's huge palms. Even so, many treasures still managed to penetrate Arjur's defense and landed on his body. Poochie. 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 Amidst the tearing sounds, the sharpest treasures pierced through Arjur's body one by one. Green blood that resembled venom flowed out of Arjur's body as he screamed in agony. Not long after, the Astral Elves, who was one of the strongest Astral Elves in the box court, were pierced by the Astral Elves. Not only were his body riddled with holes, but he was also pierced full of weapons. Under such circumstances, the mana surging from Noah's body, which was filled with golden ripples, became more and more intense. The glint in his deep, pitch-black eyes became brighter and brighter. He raised one of his hands, and one after another, precious artifacts emerged from the golden ripples one after another. They turned into flashes of light that shot toward Argel's direction. It was a scene that was like a reenactment of a myth. On one side was a human who possessed all the legendary treasures from ancient times. On the other side was one of the most powerful species that was born in a stellar-level planet. It was as if the two of them were trying to write a new myth. They were trying their best to sing the praises of the legendary power. The entire night sky seemed to have become the background of the battle stage. Every star in the sky bloomed with unprecedented brilliance. Once upon a time, in the world of Type Moon, during the Holy Grail War, the hero King Gilgamesh, who appeared in the form of a servant, and the great hero Hercules had written an identical myth. The difference was that Noah had more treasures than hero King Gilgamesh, who claimed to have all the treasures of an era. Argel, on the other hand, did not have 12 lives like Hercules. Even so, the legendary weapons that pierced through Argel's body did not slow down the movements of the Celestial, who was one of the strongest species. Even if his entire body was filled with treasures. Even if his body was riddled with holes. Even if his whole body was covered in blood. The star elf that was letting out an ear-piercing shriek was still like a berserk beast. It was unrelenting as it swung its huge palm, smashing away the treasures that were attacking it. Judging from this scene, it was no wonder that Argel was known as one of the strongest beings in the box court. Not only did it possess a terrifyingly strong life force, it also had an indomitable will. It swung its arms like a madman and continued to move forward in the rain of precious artifacts. If Argel could persevere, he would be able to reach Noah sooner or later and unleash another earth-shattering attack. It was a pity that Argel's perseverance was not inferior to his own title, but his master did not have the same ability. "You! What are you doing?" Argel. Luos, who had long been dominated by fear due to Noah's endless supply of divine spark equipment, couldn't help but let out a shameful cry. "He's just a human. Take him down for me." Before he could finish his sentence, a luxurious longsword pierced through the void like an arrow and shot towards Luos. Luos' expression changed abruptly. He raised the scythe-shaped sword in his hand and blocked in front of him. Clang! The noble phantasm collided with the scythe-shaped sword in Luos' hand. A crisp sound was heard and the unparalleled force of impact shook Luos' arm. In a hurry, Luos could not exert much strength. After being hit by such an unexpected attack, his arm went numb. He groaned and could not help but let go of the scythe-shaped sword in his hand. The scythe-shaped sword that could even chop off the head of a Medusa left Luos' hand and spun like a windmill. Finally, with a clang, it stabbed into the ground. Gulp. Luos could only hold his numb arm and take a few steps back with a pale face. Down below, Noah glanced sideways at Luz, who was hovering in the air, and calmly said with an emotionless tone, "I'm in the mood now. That's why I didn't aim these weapons at you. If you're confident that you won't die under the attack of a godhead weapon like the astral spirit that you've enslaved, then go ahead and mess things up." In other words, Luos' voice would only dampen Noah's mood. You bastard." Luos' face was filled with anger, but more than that, he was terrified. He had no choice. Under the continuous attack of a godhead weapon, Luos did not even have the confidence to survive for a second. If Noah really changed the target of the noble phantasm from Argel to Luos, Luos would be riddled with holes in an instant, and he would die without a doubt, right? When Luos understood the situation clearly, his heart was filled with rage and fear. Forget it. It's enough. The anger and fear in his heart made Luos ignore Noah's warning and shouted at Argel. "Argel! Release your true power. Freeze that human for me forever. Upon hearing Luo's words, Argel finally stopped his charge. Poof! 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 Without slowing down, the treasures continued to pierce through Argel's body. Alger, on the other hand, turned a blind eye to the incoming attack. He landed on all fours like a wild beast and suddenly raised his head. His eyes emitted a dazzling red light. Wang! The next moment, the glaring red light turned into a beautiful ray of light. Like a flash of light, it violently swept through the incoming weapons. Immediately after, the treasures that were shooting towards Argel like raindrops froze in midair. Their surfaces instantly turned into a heavy gray color. Petrification. At the position of the snake-haired demon's head on Immortal Constellation Mountain, the astral spirit that was known as the Devil Star had finally released its true power. This petrification ability was Argel's true strength. Even if they were treasures from myths and legends, they still couldn't avoid being petrified. They turned into waves of light particles and returned to the treasury. Not only that, the petrification ray was like a beam of light that swept through the ground. At the same time, the petrification ray shrouded Noah's direction. Be careful. The three girls, Black Rabbit, Kiyoshi Asaka, and Haruhito Masaaki could not help but shout. However, Noah only looked at the incoming petrification ray and raised one of his hands. Wang! In the next moment, a golden ripple fluctuated in the space beside Noah. A mirror-like light shield suddenly flashed out of the golden ripple and stood in front of Noah. The petrification ray that swept through like a beam of light landed directly on the mirror-like light shield. In fact, there were a few versions of the legend of Perseus killing Medusa. Among them, there were two versions that were the most popular. One version was that Perseus had taken advantage of Medusa's deep sleep and used a sneak attack to cut off Medusa's head. The other version was that Perseus used the mirror shield given by Athena to reflect the petrifying light of the Medusa. Only then did he cut off the head of the Medusa who had lost her petrifying power. Now, Noah had simulated the second version of the legend. Buzz! The petrifying light beam that landed on the mirror-like light shield was suddenly reflected back and swept across the ground at a speed faster than when it came. Woo 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 woo. Argel could only let out a shriek like a dying beast. His body was covered by his own petrification light and turned into a stone statue. Chapter 1286. In this abrupt situation, Argel's ear-piercing shriek vanished without a trace, causing the entire space to fall into an indescribable silence. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation. Endless Fantasy Translation. When everyone regained their senses, they could only see the petrified ground and Argel standing in the middle of the petrified ground. Luos, who was hovering in midair, witnessed the petrified scene with his own eyes. Blood drained from his face and his lips trembled. Hum. A golden ripple appeared beside Luos in an instant, accompanied by the sound of space trembling. A sharp long sword slowly emerged from the ripple and pointed at Luos' head. Luos felt a fatal sense of danger surging in his heart, causing a horrified expression to appear on his face. At this critical moment, Luos tried his best to tilt his body to the side and tilted his head back as though he wanted to break his neck. The sharp long sword sliced through the air with a faint whistling sound, brushing past the space less than 5 centimeters in front of Luos. Just now, if Luos had been a second slower to raise his head, then this profligate's head would have been directly pierced through. By then, even if Luos had half the bloodline of the gods and was considered a high-level life form, he would still die on the spot. Sweat dripped from the tip of Luos' nose as he understood this point. Hum. At this moment, another golden ripple appeared on the other side of Luos. Seeing this scene, Luos' face turned ghastly pale in an instant. Fortunately, this time, what emerged from the golden ripple was not a lethal weapon, but a silver chain with golden light flowing all over it. Whoosh! The silver chain with golden light flowing all over it swept across the space and turned into the shadow of a whip that struck Luo's waist heavily. Bang! Amidst the muffled sound, Luz let out a blood-curdling scream. His entire body shot down from mid-air, rubbing against the atmosphere, bringing about a sharp piercing sound as he crashed heavily onto the ground. Cough, cough, cough. Luoz could only clutch his waist and cough out some blood foam as he struggled to lift his head. Luoz saw it the moment he lifted his head. He saw a scythe-shaped sword pointing at him, a scene that was imprinted in his eyes. It was the sickle-shaped sword that Luoz had sent flying. Noah held the sickle-shaped sword that he had pulled out from the ground and pointed it at Luoz while looking down at him from above. Although you're one of the strongest astral elves, you're still a slave to a spoiled brat. Is this all you've got? Luoz's face contorted slightly. However, Noah's words were not wrong. As one of the strongest astral elves and the strongest astral elves among the 3 strongest astral elves, even if Arjul's strength was not comparable to White Yiksha's, it was definitely not at this level. Unfortunately, as the astral elves, Arjul was enslaved by Perseus. His spiritual lattice had shrunk significantly, and his strength had decreased exponentially. Furthermore, he was enslaved by Luoz, an ignorant spoiled brat. Thinking about it, the restraints on Arjul's body must have been locked onto Luoz's body because Luoz was unable to control his enslaved target. This restricted Arjul's strength and allowed Luoz to control him successfully. As one of the strongest astral elves, his strength was weakened over and over again, which led to Arjul's defeat. Otherwise, Noah believed that he would not have been able to defeat one of the strongest astral elves without taking any damage without releasing the relic's true name from the treasury. The famous astral elves have fallen to such a level. How pitiful. Noah sneered. However, it's over now. As soon as he finished speaking, Noah's eyes turned cold. He suddenly raised the scythe-shaped sword in his hand above his head and slashed it down heavily at Luoz's head. Luoz would definitely die if the sword slashed down. Luoz, who understood his fate, did not even have the time to scream. The slash that tore through the air was imprinted in his eyes. Clank. Just when Luoz thought he was going to die, a crisp sound was suddenly heard. It was the sound of Noah's scythe-shaped sword being blocked. It was a paper fan that blocked the scythe-shaped sword. It was an ordinary paper fan that could not be any more ordinary. Alright, kid, that's enough. As he said that, Bayasha appeared beside Noah without anyone noticing. He extended his hand and used the paper fan in his hand to block the scythe-shaped sword that could kill a deity. He stared at Noah and said, "No matter what, I'm still the ruler of the East District, the manager of order. This guy is also my comrade in the same community. It's not good to kill him in front of me, right?" Before Noah could respond to White Yiksha's words, Luoz, who still had a lingering fear in his heart, shouted out in anger from embarrassment. "Do you still know that you're the ruler of the East District? This guy is brazenly preparing to kill someone. I request that you punish him." It had to be said that Luoz, the spoiled brat, did not know how to appreciate favors. Bayasha took the initiative to save Luo's life, but this guy vented his anger on Bayasha. He was the best example of a spoiled brat. In response, Inverse 16 Knights, who also came over, said with a smile, "I remember that the one who attacked first was this spoiled brat, right?" "That's right," Joyuan Osaka said without hesitation. Noah was only defending himself. "What crime is there? Or rather, the one who attacked first should be punished, right?" Hiroi Buyao tilted his head and said, "Then, should we be the ones asking for punishment?" "That's right." Black Rabbit nodded heavily. "Lord Bayasha, Mr. Luoz attacked a member of our community. We should have the right to ask him to apologize, right? You want me to apologize to a mere John Doe? Luoz was about to explode from anger. Don't even think about it. Did you hear that? Bayasha. Noah cast his gaze on Bayasha and said with a faint smile. Tell me, what should we do about this? Don't worry. I've been watching this from the side. I know very well who's right and who's wrong. Bayasha glanced at Luoz and snorted coldly. The one who attacked first was indeed Luoz from Perseus. I accept your request. What? Luoz widened his eyes in disbelief. What? Do you have a problem with that? Bayasha looked at Luoz and a boldness that was even stronger than Noah's surged from him. If you can't accept it, then I can also hold a meeting and publicize what the leader of Perseus did today, including the fact that he was beaten up by the opponent he looked down on, to the entire East District. Luoz's face twitched, but he could not say anything else. If news of him being beaten up in the name of self-defense after attacking first spread throughout the entire East District, then Perseus would be utterly humiliated. Even if they were to retire from the 5-digit ranking, they would still have to accept other people's disdain. However, it was absolutely impossible for Luoz to apologize to Noah. As if he saw through Luoz's thoughts, Noah raised the scythe-shaped sword in his hand and suddenly said, Forget it. There's no need for an apology. I'll just ask for this bestowed weapon as compensation. What? Luoz cried out. Impossible. Absolutely impossible. If the bestowed weapon passed down by Perseus was given a no name because of Luoz's personal battle compensation, then Luoz would not only be humiliated, but he might even be impeached by the members of the community. Most importantly, if he lost the gift of the scythe-shaped sword, Luoz's strength would greatly decrease. This was something Luoz could not accept. What? You can't accept it. Noah turned his head and looked at Luoz, then suddenly smiled. Then, why don't we use the bestowed game to decide? Chapter 1287. Gift Game. Suddenly, everyone present was stunned. Luoz was also stunned for a moment, and then an idea popped up in his mind. This guy, he must be thinking of using this opportunity to take back the vampire, right? This idea, it must be said, was quite stupid. After all, if Noah's goal was only this, then he should just let Luoz hand over Letitia's ownership to him as compensation. Why would he need to take the scythe-shaped sword and use it as a bargaining chip to start the gift game? Thus, when Luoz had such a self-righteous idea, Noah's next words once again stunned him. If you can win the gift game, then I will let bygones be bygones and return the gift weapon to you. Noah looked at Luoz with a malicious gaze. If you lose, then you will also use the gift weapon as compensation and give me Hermes' boots. How about it? What? Luoz was stunned. Don't you want to take back the vampire? There are many ways to take back Letitia. Noah played with the scythe-shaped sword in his hand while casually replying. Anyway, aren't you planning to sell Letitia? When the time comes, I will buy her back for 10 times the price. 10 times the price. Jiyoshi Asuka and Haruhi Byayoshi were shocked. 10 times the price. Byakuya and 16 Knights were also shocked. 10 times the price. Black Rabbit almost fell over. 10 times the price. Luoz simply laughed out loud. Are you kidding? What kind of price do you think I sold the vampire for? How can no name, who doesn't even have a flag or a name, pay 10 times the price? This was also the reason why everyone was shocked. One should know that Luoz did not hesitate to use the name of Thousand Eyes, which allowed Perseus to take root in the 5-digit community, to cancel the gift game that had Letitia as a prize. He planned to sell Letitia outside of the box. To be able to make Luos, who loved to eat, drink, and have fun, to do this, one could imagine how much the person who wanted to buy Letitia had paid. Meanwhile, the community known as No Name was already in dire straits. Under such circumstances, how could they pay 10 times the price? That was why Black Rabbit almost fell over. After all, no one knew better than Black Rabbit how poor No Name was. Under such circumstances, Noah looked at Luos with a smile and raised his hand. In the next moment, golden ripples appeared from the space behind Noah. One by one, the highest grade of divinity-grade weapons appeared in front of everyone's eyes. I just don't know how much you're willing to pay. Noah suddenly smiled. But, I think, no matter how expensive it is, it can't be more expensive than the divinity-grade gifts that I have, right? Also, no one would be willing to reject my divinity-grade gifts in exchange, right? Luos stopped breathing. The spectators were also stunned on the spot. That's right. In the box, gifts were undoubtedly the most expensive things. Among all the blessings, the Godhead was undoubtedly the most precious. With so many divinity-grade gifts, who wouldn't be willing to trade with Noah? 10 times the price. Perhaps, Noah only needed to take out 1 or 2 divinity-grade weapons in exchange for a vampire. Unless there was a special purpose, no matter who it was, they would be eager to please Noah, right? Only then did everyone realize what was going on. The man in front of them was the real nouveau riche. This was because Noah had considered that the currency in circulation in this world was specially made, so he didn't take out the mountain of gold coins. Otherwise, Luos would definitely be scared to death. While everyone was still in shock, Noah spoke calmly. Do you want to play or not? If not, I'll leave. After saying that, Noah lowered his hand, and the treasures retreated back into the golden ripples one after another. The golden ripples rippled like water and disappeared, and it looked like it was about to leave. Wait! Wait! Luos quickly shouted. Even if you want to play a game of gifts, you have so many divinity-grade gifts, I can't beat you at all. This is not fair. Is that so? Noah turned around and looked at Luos with an unfathomable expression. If that's the case, how about I give you an advantageous condition? After saying this, Noah stretched out his hand. A golden ripple spread out and spat out 10 gold coins, which fell into Noah's hand. The content of the game of gifts is purely to test one's luck by tossing gold coins. You can't use any factors other than luck, including gifts, to influence the outcome. Noah raised the 10 gold coins in his hand. As for these 10 gold coins, if all of them are heads, I'll win. If one of them is tails, you'll win. How about that? Noah's words shocked everyone. Mr. Noah. Hey-2 quickly asked. Isn't this too disadvantageous for you? It's purely to test one's luck and you can't use any factors other than luck. All 10 gold coins must be heads for you to win. Zhou Yuanfei was also shocked. It's not disadvantageous anymore. It's almost impossible, right? I think it's very difficult. Haruai Buyao looked troubled. If I were to do it, I wouldn't have the confidence to win either. Brat, are you serious? Even White Yiksha's brows furrowed. No, I should say, do you really want to win? Only 16 knights didn't say anything. He just looked straight at Noah. When he saw that Noah maintained the highest level of calmness, he laughed. What? Isn't it interesting? What's wrong with trying? Hey-2, Zhou Yuanfei, and Haruai Buyao didn't expect 16 knights to agree. They were all at a loss. At this time, Luos finally reacted and stared at Noah. You really won't use factors other than luck to interfere? What are you worried about? Noah shrugged. There are Hakata nobles here who have the right to judge. If Hey-2 is the judge, then it's impossible to cheat, right? Fine. Luos's expression was uncertain as he clenched his teeth. All 10 gold coins must be heads for you to win. Noah didn't say anything and just looked at Byakuya. Since both sides have agreed, then I have no objections. Byakuya sighed and took out his gift card. In the next second, Byakuya's gift card flashed and turned into 2 pieces of parchment paper that fell into Noah's and Luos's hands. What appeared from Byakuya's gift card was a gift called a contract document. It was a necessary document for the gift game. Not only did the document record the organizer, participants, game rules, winning conditions, punishment, failure conditions, and other game-related information, but it also had a certain degree of power. For example, when the contract document said, "Can't use gifts to harm participants," then the power of the contract would protect the participant. Even if the participant was attacked, they wouldn't be harmed. Moreover, as long as the contract document was there, the participant couldn't go against the price they had to pay to lose the game. Therefore, the contract document was the most important gift for Hakata, who treated the gift game as everything. And on the contract document in Noah's and Luos's hands, it also clearly recorded information about the gift game that was about to be held. Gift game name, Test of Luck. Participant 1, Noah Dole. Participant 2, Luos Perseus. Game rules, factors other than luck are not allowed. Participant 1 victory conditions, all 10 gold coins face heads. Participant 2 victory conditions, when participant 1 is unable to achieve the victory conditions. Requirements, when the participant interferes with the game process with factors other than luck, it will be judged as a failure. Oath, respect the above content, based on the glory and flag, and the organizer's authority, the gift game will be held. Thousand Eyes Seal. Chapter 1288. Bestowment Game Name, Test of Luck. Contestant 1, Noah Dole. Contestant 2, Luos Perseus. Game rules, factors other than luck are not allowed. Contestant 1 victory condition, 10 gold coins all face the front. Contestant 2 victory condition, when contestant 1 is unable to achieve the victory condition. Requirements, when contestant uses factors other than luck to interfere with the game process, it will be judged as a failure. Oath, respect the above content. Based on glory, flag, and the host's authority, the bestowment game will be held. Thousand Eyes Seal. After confirming that there were no problems with the contents of the contract, Noah and Luos handed the contract to White Yiksha at the same time and looked at each other. Noah directly threw the 10 gold coins to Black Rabbit. Black Rabbit, you will be the judge. I know. Black Rabbit held the 10 gold coins nervously as he walked to the middle of Noah and Luos. Then, let's begin the bestowment game between Noah Dole and Luos Perseus. I, Black Rabbit, will be the judge. Do you two have any objections? Noah naturally shook his head and expressed that he had no objections. Even Luos did not express his opinion and agreed with Black Rabbit's decision. Logically speaking, Noah and Black Rabbit were companions. If Black Rabbit were to be the judge, it was very likely that the other party would be biased towards Noah and help Noah cheat to win the bestowment game. That shouldn't have made Luos feel so assured. However, the ears and eyes of Rabbit, who was known as the Box Court Aristocrat, were connected to the Box Court Central Hub. In the bestowment game, Rabbit could determine the loser and choose the chips. If Black Rabbit wanted to use his personal selfishness to forcefully influence the decision, he would directly explode and die. It was not a joke. His entire body would explode and turn into minced meat. He would be deader than dead. Because of this, Luos was not worried that Black Rabbit would secretly side with Noah. Then, Black Rabbit tightly held the gold coins in his hand. The game begins. After saying that, the black rabbit threw the 10 gold coins in its hand up at the same time. Everyone's eyes followed the 10 gold coins that were being tossed into the air, and then lowered their heads to follow the free-falling gold coins. Clang 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 clang. With a crisp sound, the 10 gold coins fell to the ground and rolled for a while. Not long after, the 10 gold coins all stopped rolling and lay quietly on the ground. At this moment, everyone present widened their eyes in shock. This was because the 10 gold coins lying quietly on the ground were all facing the front. That's right. All of it. In other words, Noah had won with a pitifully small probability. That's impossible. Luos yelled. How could such a small probability appear? Not to mention Luos, even the rest of the people were stunned as they looked at each other. Only 16 Knights had a pensive look in his eyes. As a combat power type, 16 Knights reverse naturally did not believe that such a pitifully small probability would appear only once. However, Noah's calm demeanor told 16 Knights that he had absolute confidence that he could make this pitifully small probability appear. Then, why was Noah so confident? Undoubtedly, other than luck, other factors were not allowed to be involved, right? Could it be that Noah is really confident that he can win this game that seems to have a pitiful chance of winning by luck alone? No. Impossible. No one could have absolute confidence in the illusory concept of luck. Noah must have used some method to do it, and it wouldn't violate the rules. What method could it be? In an instant, 16 Knights fell into deep thought. Unfortunately, 16 Knights could not figure it out no matter how hard he thought. This was because 16 Knights didn't know that Noah had a skill that originated from his ability value. It was a skill called Protection from the World. Protection from the World, a permanent skill. Equivalent to luck. Events that were directly related to luck would eventually lead to the most favorable outcome. It was this skill that gave Noah the confidence to win in a game that relied purely on luck. Of course, in fact, Noah was not as confident as he looked. After all, this skill that came from his ability points, in the end, should be considered as a gift. And the rules of the game were that other than luck could not interfere with the game. This included the use of gifts. Therefore, Noah himself did not know whether protection from the world would be effective or not. However, the nature of this skill was the blessing that the world gave to Noah. Therefore, rather than calling it a gift, it was better to call it the world's preference. Noah was gambling. He was gambling to see if the world's preference for him would win over the judgment of the central hub. He was gambling to see if the skill, protection from the world, would be judged as another influence. Now, it was up to the central hub to judge. Anyway, if he lost, he would just have to return the scythe sword. For Noah, it was not a big deal at all. However, this way, it would be troublesome to take back Letitia. Noah would also not be able to teach this ignorant and incompetent second generation a lesson. Yes. The reason why he wanted to hold such a game was to let this nouveau riche and the second generation have a taste of what it means to be a nouveau riche and the second generation. What was it like to be a prodigal? Therefore, Noah calmly asked Black Rabbit for confirmation. Black Rabbit, did the central hub judge that I cheated? Hearing this, Black Rabbit closed his eyes. A pair of long ears trembled slightly. After a while, he opened his eyes and looked at Noah. That pair of eyes was filled with shock and surprise. However, Black Rabbit still gave the answer truthfully. The central hub of the central hub believes that Mr. Noah did not cheat in this game. It was completely based on luck. The game's conditions are met, and the game's results are still valid. As soon as he finished, the way everyone looked at Noah changed. He became extremely confused and startled. Was it really just luck that achieved this result? How was this possible? On the other side, Noah also let out a sigh of relief. Seems like the world's preference for me is greater than the central hub's judgment. But Luos shook his head in disbelief. Impossible. Impossible. Unfortunately, no matter how much Luos did not dare to believe, the result was the result. Then, young master of the five-figure community, please follow the rules of the game and give me the reward. Noah's lips curled up. It's Hermes' boots. Don't try to cheat. Hearing this, Luo's body trembled slightly. Not only did he lose the scythe sword, but he also lost Hermes' boots. The two extremely famous gifts that were inherited from his ancestors were obtained by no name, just like that. In the future, how could Perseus establish a foothold in the box? If it was any other reward, then so be it. However, the scythe and boots were the founder of Perseus, the famous hero Perseus left behind the legend of the community. If Luos really lost it, then it was easy to imagine what kind of infamy Luos would have to bear. With this thought in mind, Luos finally walked on a path of no return. Wait! Wait! Luos shouted. I still want to bet. I still want to bet with you. Hearing Luos' words, Noah smiled. That smile was as if everything was going according to Noah's plan. With the smile on his face, Noah asked in a seemingly kind manner. I don't mind, but this time, what do you plan to use as the bet? I'll use this. Luos seemed to have completely turned into a gambler. He took out his gift card and in the flash of the gift card, he took out a helmet. Hades' helmet of invisibility. I'll use this to continue the bet with you. Okay. Noah agreed without hesitation. This game, I accept. As a result, a one-sided gamble that had no suspense, and the most unbelievable and hilarious unfolded silently on the petrified field. Chapter 1289. Half an hour later, on the ground that was still petrified, White Yiksha, Black Rabbit, Jo Yubi, and Haruai Hikari's group looked at each other in silence. Their expressions were strange and complicated to the extreme. Reverse 16 Nights was also silent. His expression wasn't that complicated. He was just taking pleasure in others' misfortune. This schadenfreude was directed at none other than a certain ignorant and incompetent second generation. Why, Luos, who was almost completely stripped, was lying on the ground with only a pair of shorts on his body. He checked the 10 gold coins that were used to execute the game over and over again, trying to find out if the gold coins were tampered with. As a result, every time he checked, Luos became more and more desperate. Why? Why do I keep losing? In front of the extremely unwilling Luos, there were many things piled up in front of Noah. Among those things, there was the scythe sword that could kill gods, the boots of Hermes that could fly, and even the helmet of Hades that could turn invisible. Most of the many gifts that the hero Perseus had were here. Other than that, there were some other things. There was a gift weapon in the shape of a flame bow. There were pieces of IOUs that were filled with Luos's name. Even the clothes that Luos was still wearing were piled up messily on the floor. And these were all Noah's spoils of war. Noah, who was happily counting his spoils of war, looked at the almost completely stripped Luos with a playful attitude and shrugged. I say, young master, do you still want to gamble? When the word gamble came out of Noah's mouth, Luos's whole body trembled. His face was filled with the greatest fear that he had ever felt. That fear even exceeded the fear that Luos felt when he saw Noah's endless divine persona-grade gift weapons. It couldn't be helped. Because of the word gamble, Luos had lost almost all of his assets. In this half an hour, Noah and Luos had gambled at least a dozen times. And every time, Noah would emerge victorious. Under such circumstances, Luos had lost everything. The biggest ones were the various gifts they had inherited from their ancestors. It was as small as the clothes he was wearing. Apart from that, there was also the community's money, items, and even collections. Luos had lost almost all of them to Noah. That was the reason for those IOUs. It could be said that apart from the community's flag, name, companions, and the short necklace that represented Noah's sovereignty over the demon star, Luz had lost everything else to Noah. Moreover, there was not the slightest bit of suspense. Under such circumstances, how could Luos not be afraid of the word gamble? Why? Why? Luos was about to go crazy. He kept checking the gold coins in his hand with bloodshot eyes. Undoubtedly, other than luck, no other factors can interfere. Why do I keep losing? Why? This was also the question in the hearts of everyone present. It was clearly written in black and white on the contract. Other than luck, no other factors were allowed to interfere. Otherwise, it would be determined that the person who interfered had lost. As for Noah and Luos, one of them had to have all 10 gold coins face heads to win, while the other only had to have 1 gold coin face tails to win. No matter how one looked at it, it was impossible for Noah to lose to the former, right? Yet, Noah was always the winner of these gambles. That was only considered a win if all 10 gold coins were facing the head. If it appeared once, it was already considered extremely lucky. If it appeared twice, it could only be said to be extremely lucky. If it appeared 3 times, then it was already heaven-defying. In the end, after more than a dozen rounds, the 10 gold coins were all in the front in each round. How could pure luck reach such a level? How was that possible? You must have done something. Luz roared at Noah, his eyes almost popping out of their sockets. Speak. What exactly did you do? I say, ignorant and incompetent second-generation young master, are you still suspecting that I cheated? Noah said in a tone that was both sympathetic and pitiful. Then you can continue to seek confirmation from the nobles of Hecate. I don't mind. Seek confirmation. How was he going to seek confirmation? From the beginning until now, Luos had already suspected Noah of doing something in the game more than once. However, Black Rabbit, who had the authority to judge, had confirmed time and time again that Noah did not cheat. Those were the answers given by the central authority of Hecate. As a nobleman of Hecate, if Black Rabbit went against the rules and sided with Noah, he would explode and die. Hence, this answer could not be false. However, who would believe that Noah did not cheat? Even Noah's companions, Reverse 16 Knights, Joyuen Flying Bird, Kasuga Hikari, and Black Rabbit would not believe it. However, if Noah had cheated, why did the central authority of Hecate not judge that Noah had violated the rules? Could it be that Noah had really relied on pure luck? This puzzling situation made the Sun Star Spirit, White Yiksha, and the intelligent Reverse 16 Knights troubled, not to mention the ignorant and incompetent Luos. Why is this happening? Why is this happening? Luos grabbed his head and looked like he was going crazy. What's the problem? However, Noah did not show the slightest bit of pity or sympathy. Instead, he spoke directly. I say, do you still want to bet or not? If not, I'll take my loot and leave. Finishing his sentence, Noah took out the dark gold gift card. Clank. The dark gold gift card suddenly emitted a dazzling light that enveloped the pile of loot in front of Noah. It kept the scythe sword, Hermes' boots, and Hades' helmet of invisibility. Seeing this scene, Luos could no longer remain silent. Chapter 1290. The next day, in the No-Name Base's meeting room, everyone welcomed their former companions who used to belong to this community. This time, I'm really grateful for everyone's kindness. The vampire girl, who had extremely bright golden hair that reached her waist, was tied behind her head with a ribbon. Her figure was extremely petite, but her face was extremely cute. She lifted her skirt and bowed to everyone in the meeting room with etiquette that she was not used to. To be able to return to this community, I'm really touched. Everyone's kindness, Letitia will definitely remember it in her heart. Hearing this, 16 Knights Reverse, Jyo Yuasuke, and Haruhito Masaaki were all speechless. Not only 16 Knights, Jyo Yuki, and Hiroi Toshi, but even Black Rabbit and Ren were dumbfounded. They looked at Letitia with an incredulous expression. The room suddenly fell into an indescribable silence. Under such circumstances, Letitia raised her head and said with some confusion, "What's wrong? Is there something wrong?" Everyone suddenly looked at each other. Noah, who was in the middle of the crowd, scratched his cheek. He represented everyone present and raised a question to Letitia. "Why are you dressed like that?" Taking a closer look, Letitia wasn't wearing the red leather jacket that Noah saw last time. Instead, she was wearing a white dress with blue edges and a pleated edge. It looked a little light and was a very cute maid's uniform. Letitia, who was already extraordinarily cute, wore such a petite maid dress. It had to be said that she was really cute to the extreme. She was so cute that people couldn't help but think that they were looking at a doll. However, it was this dress that made Black Rabbit and Ren's faces messy. "Letitia. Master Letitia," Black Rabbit said with some confusion. "Why dress up as a maid?" Ren also nodded. His expression was the same as Black Rabbit's, full of confusion. It wasn't that Black Rabbit and Ren were too anxious. It was just that Letitia's dress was too out of their expectations. After all, Letitia herself was not only a pure-blooded vampire, but also had a divinity. She even wreaked havoc in the box as the Demon King. After joining the community, with Letitia's identity as the former Demon King, it was easy to imagine what kind of status she would have. To Black Rabbit and Ren, Letitia was undoubtedly a senior that they had to look up to. But now, this senior had changed into a maid's uniform. How could Black Rabbit and Ren not be confused? "So you're referring to this?" Letitia seemed to have only just remembered this and said. "White Yiksha asked me to wear this." "Lord White Yiksha?" Black Rabbit was stunned. "Yes," Letitia said matter-of-factly. "I am now Master Noah's servant, so I naturally have the right to call myself a servant." "Servant?" Black Rabbit and Ren were stunned again. "Servant?" Kiyoshi Asuka and Hiroi Buyaichi blinked. "Servant?" Noah was also stunned. Instead, it was 16th Knight who seemed to have understood what was going on and suddenly opened his mouth. "So that's how it is. Because the second-generation young master lost this blonde loli, then she naturally became the property of the winner, right?" After 16th Knight mentioned this, everyone remembered this matter. Indeed. As the property of Luos, Letitia lost to Noah in the gift game in the form of a bet. In other words, Noah had the ownership of Letitia. Even if that's the case, I've never thought of making you my servant, have I?" Noah hurriedly said. "I'm just helping the community win you back. Even if it's counted, it should be the property of the community, right?" "Your words are a bit wrong, Master Noah." Letitia frowned and said to Noah in a mature tone. "Although it's natural to work for the welfare of the community, you've obtained victory in the game of blessings in your own name and obtained ownership of me. In other words, I'm considered your possession, and the community isn't so pedantic as to confiscate the private property of its members. But, treating you as an item, I didn't think of that." Noah frowned. "You have your own will and your own thoughts. There's no reason for me to restrict your personal freedom, and I don't want to do that." Hearing this, Letitia was startled. Soon after, her stern and beautiful face eased up. Master Noah is indeed a very gentle person. Ah. Noah's expression became resentful. Where did you come to this conclusion? From the beginning. Letitia had a faint smile on her face. You chose to join us because you wanted to help Black Rabbit and the community. Isn't that gentle enough? Black Rabbit was stunned and said in surprise. Help me. What? So you don't know anything? 16 Nights looked at Black Rabbit and suddenly smiled. Then, she pointed at Noah. I heard it clearly. The reason why this guy joined the community was to help you. Black Rabbit was at a loss of what to do. It looked at Noah with eyes full of confusion and doubt. Is that so? The reason isn't important at all. Noah looked away embarrassedly. I chose to join this community based on my own will. There's no other meaning. Hee hee. Letitia covered her mouth and secretly laughed a few times. Master Noah, don't feel shy. It's okay. Lou. So long-winded. Noah awkwardly changed the topic. Aren't we discussing Letitia's problem now? This problem doesn't need to be discussed at all. Letitia stood up and looked straight at Noah. No matter what Master Noah thinks, you won fair and square in the game of gifts and obtained my ownership. Then, I have the obligation to become your property. This is the rule that must be followed in this world where the game of gifts is everything. Master, you must understand. Okay. Noah frowned and said helplessly. But, there's no reason to make you my servant, right? Is that so? Letitia tilted her head and said in confusion. In other words, compared to a servant, I should be more of a slave. Why can't we be companions? Noah was speechless. Even if you're my personal property and can't be a companion, compared to a servant, you can still be a subordinate or something, right? Before Letitia could respond, 16 Nights spoke up first. What? Little brother. This is a golden-haired lowly maid. Don't you want her? 16 Nights said in disbelief and annoyance. If I knew I could get a golden-haired lowly maid, I would have played with that second-generation young master that day. So, I've never had a golden-haired maid. Joa Osaka looked at Letitia for a while and then sighed. I suddenly want a golden-haired maid. Monopolizing her, that's too cunning. Haruhito Yori also looked at Noah. Good things should be shared with everyone. So, I don't intend to treat Letitia as my personal property. Noah smiled bitterly and then looked at Kurorobi and Ren. Kurorobi and Ren, do you also think I should treat Letitia as my personal property? Kurorobi and Ren suddenly looked at each other. This. Kurorobi stuttered. Although it's not that I agree, but Noah-san did win the game of gifts fair and square, there's nothing wrong with that. So, I don't have the right to ask Noah-san to take out his personal property and share it with everyone in the community. Ren hesitated and also said. This may be the best result. Noah was speechless. Then, Master Noah. Letitia smiled. I'll be in your care in the future. Yes. Chapter 1291. In the game of gifts with Luos, Noah won every bet with his explosive luck and won a lot of things. In addition to the gifts that originally belonged to hero Perseus, Noah also won a lot of promissory notes signed by Luos. Those promissory notes were all Luos's assets and Perseus as collateral. Some of them were gifts, some were other precious works of art, and some were pure money. After that, Black Rabbit and Ren took these promissory notes and let White Yiksha make the decision, and obtained a lot of benefits from Perseus. Other things aside, they did obtain a lot of money, which made the originally poor and destitute, no name, suddenly rich. After all, the amount of money that Luos took out when he used the assets in Perseus as collateral, even if it wasn't a sky-high amount, it was still the entire collection of Perseus up until now. The money in the community's treasury was in the 5 digits. It was easy to imagine how much money it was for No Name, who only had a little over 100 children. With this money, No Name could truly get rid of their destitute situation. Even if it was extravagant for a few years, there would be no problem. At this point, some people might be confused. Undoubtedly, Noah's treasury had an endless amount of gold coins, so why did he need Perseus' assets? In fact, Noah had only found out about this matter not too long ago. The money used in the box court was basically special. The currency used in the box court was usually copper, silver, and gold coins. On the surface, the currency issued in the box court city was based on the same proportion of gold, silver, and copper coins. However, in this box court city, the value of the currency was not determined by the proportion of gold, silver, and copper, but by the flag engraved on the currency. In other words, the currency in the box court was sold by the large commercial communities. Pure gold, silver, and copper were not very valuable in this world. It was said that the reason why the commercial communities sold currency was because they were competing for the currency circulation rate and the value of the gift game. That was why the community flag was engraved on the currency. For this reason, the pure gold coins in Noah's treasure vault naturally couldn't be taken out and used unless they were sold in large quantities and exchanged for currency that could be circulated in the box. Therefore, to No Name, the wealth from Perseus was as important as obtaining a treasure. Originally, according to Letitia, the money that Noah won from Luce under his own name should belong to him. There was no reason for him to contribute to No Name. However, firstly, No Name was in dire need of money, and the money in Noah's hands would undoubtedly be able to solve the community's burning need. Secondly, Noah himself wasn't that obsessed with money, which was why he took out the money for the community to use.